Hello. Hi. Happy Thursday night to everybody. Gentlemen's Friday, if you will. Nice to see you. Thank you for coming here tonight. As always, you can support this channel by going to patreon.com/Hemant, and you can subscribe to my newsletter for free by going to friendlyatheist.com. There's a lot of interesting things that will be posted there very soon as well. And we have Den in the comments who is helping out with moderation. So if you leave any comments for me, if you have any questions as we're going through segments, leave them in the comments. Den will make sure I see them all. And at the end of tonight's show, he's doing a giveaway for a membership for this channel. He will tell you all about that in the comments as well. I'm going to go ahead and get started by talking about news that I was not expecting today. So you may have heard this morning, but the Supreme Court issued its ruling already on a case involving a charter school, a religious charter school in Oklahoma. And I'll get to what they said and what it means in a little bit. But I thought it might be helpful to talk a little bit about what was at stake here. What is this ruling even about? Because I don't know if everyone has a good understanding of what this case was even about. So this case involved a school in Oklahoma called the St. Isidore of Seville Catholic Virtual School. Long name for something pretty simple, which is that this is a private Catholic school that said, we're a charter school, so give us taxpayer money to fund and run our Catholic school. This is basically what they wanted to do with it. I would argue the only reason they even set it up is because they wanted to test the boundary of whether public money could go toward their private Catholic school. And so, long story short, they wanted to open this up. Ryan Walters, the superintendent of public instruction in Oklahoma, helped make it happen. And they got this thing through. And for all intents and purposes, this charter school was ready to open last year, and they were going to get public money to do it because Oklahoma has a system where they use taxpayer money for charter schools. But there were multiple lawsuits to try to stop that from happening. The one that actually made it far is one filed by none other than Oklahoma's Attorney General, Gentner Drummond, who is hardcore Republican, but also weirdly on the side of church-state separation. So that guy filed a lawsuit with the state Supreme Court saying you got to put a stop to this. And the Oklahoma Supreme Court said 7-1, yeah, we do need to put a stop to this. They said Oklahoma's Constitution has a rule that says public money cannot go toward religion, endorsing religion, promoting religion. So yeah, this totally violates our state constitution. And just to go a little further into that, it's not just that it's money going to a Catholic school. This is a school that would not require teachers to be certified. They would not have to accept openly LGBTQ teachers. They could explicitly promote Catholicism during school hours. If you are a student who happens to get pregnant, they could expel you. If you were a student who was transgender, they could expel you because, according to the Catholic Church, you don't exist. And, they're not going to teach you the things you would expect from a public school, like sex education, for example. And you have to wonder whether this school would have the resources to take on kids with special needs. So this is not this was not just a charter school that happened to be Catholic. This was a Catholic school that wanted to take public funding. You know what I mean? And so after the Oklahoma State Supreme Court shot it down, before that was the final word, a bunch of right-wing groups asked the U.S. Supreme Court to step in because they said that denying this school funding violated their First Amendment rights. They said, and I'm quoting from an article here, that the state Supreme Court ruling unconstitutionally punished the free exercise of religion by disqualifying the religious from government aid. But again, it's not that this happened to be a Catholic school doing secular things. This was a Catholic school that wanted to do Catholic things. So they don't get taxpayer money to pull that off. This didn't seem complicated. And a lot of groups, including the Attorney General of Oklahoma, urged the Supreme Court, just don't take up this case. We're good. There is no controversy here. You don't need to step in. Just Back off. And they're right. I mean, the Supreme Court had no good reason to interfere here. The school intended to promote religion. The state's constitution says you can't do that with public money. So that was the end of the story. Why would you step in if there's no controversy? And then this past January, the US Supreme Court said, oh, we're totally taking up this case. And that was not great news, because why would they want to take up this case that isn't even controversial and is totally settled law unless they wanted to undo that? You know what I mean? Now, one of the interesting things about this case, and stick a pin in this, it'll matter later, is that Amy Coney Barrett said, I am not going to participate in this case. And while she didn't explain why she wasn't participating, it turns out, as reporters figured out, she is close friends with the law professor who happened to be advising the Catholic school. So for the sake of optics, she said, I don't want to appear biased, so I'm not going to involve myself in this case. But you have to think, there are still 5 conservatives on this Supreme Court and only 3 liberals, so who cares if Amy Coney Barrett wasn't on here? So now we cut to later on. This was when? In March? I think they argued this case. I'm going to try to jump. Oh, I'm sorry. They argued this case in April. And what was scary is when you listen to the oral arguments of this case, every reporter I know who covers legal cases was like, well, that didn't look good. I want to show you one of them. This is from Vox, Ian Millhiser. This is how he put it at the time. The religious right is headed toward a revolutionary victory. And what Millhiser was basically saying is nothing, the questions the conservative justices were asking were not the sort of questions you would expect if they were going to rule in favor of the state. This is interesting. Brett Kavanaugh asked if the court now has a different constitutional understanding of whether church and state is even permitted. That new understanding is this: so long as an American can choose not to participate in state-backed religious operation, church and state don't need to be separate. Well, that's frightening. Like, just because they're not forcing you to go to the Catholic school, therefore it's legal? That sounds horrible. And look at what Millhiser said. Kavanaugh's new regime would mandate a great deal of state funding for religious schools as long as you have a choice about where to send your child. Like, that's not great. Brett Kavanaugh clearly is not on our side. There was another thing here, too. Elena Kagan spent much of the argument trying to draw out the implications of how this would even work if they ruled in favor of the school. What if a religious charter school doesn't want to educate kids who don't share the school's faith? Well, unlike a public school, they could just say no. Or suppose that a religious charter school wanted to toss out state curricular standards altogether. She brought up the example of an Orthodox Jewish yeshiva where instruction would focus almost entirely on the Talmud, to the exclusion of topics like math and English. Would taxpayers be required to fund this school as well? And she's right to ask all these questions, because if you allow funding to support one religious school with taxpayer funding, why can't any other religious school just say, hey, we're a charter school now, you have to give us access to the public coffers? And that's what she was getting at. But you expect her to do it because she's a good justice. And this is how Ian Millhiser finished up this piece. The court's rulings in these cases will come in the next few months, but for now, it appears the Republican justices' religious conservative revolution is likely to march onward, remaking public schools and potentially many other public institutions. So that was scary. And I'm only pointing out that article to say that's kind of what everyone took away from that case. The conservative justices did not suggest they were going to vote any way other than in favor of this school. And then, and I know this is what you all may have seen this morning, the Supreme Court issued its ruling. And the weird thing is, it was short and it was quick. And this is it right here. Let me show this to you. This is all they put out there. And you can see all of these lawsuits were just boiled up into one. Look at sentence 2 first. Judge Barrett took no part. Yeah, we know that. She wasn't involved in this. But then sentence 1, the judgment is affirmed by an equally divided court. They're saying the Oklahoma Supreme Court that said no to the Catholic charter school, that decision stays in place. Why? Because there was a 4-4 split. between the other justices. And that is kind of shocking because that means one of those conservatives decided to go with the liberals. Now, who was it? According to this decision, we don't actually know. It was clearly John Roberts. Like, he's the only possibility here, but he doesn't explain why. So keep that in mind. Like, I don't know why John Roberts decided to go with the liberals on this one. He's done it a couple times in the past where he just sides with the liberals on random cases here and there. And in this case, he didn't explain himself. Like, I don't know if he did it because he just feels Oklahoma is correct. The Oklahoma Supreme Court was correct to do this. Maybe he did it because there's no controversy. Maybe he knows that if you allow this school to get funding, it's going to mean that across the country, all these religious schools are going to demand access to taxpayer funding in similar ways. So I wish we knew his reasoning, but we don't. Still, that means for now, St. Isidore doesn't get to open. I think they were super excited to open up this fall. They're not going to get to do that. This thing is dead for now. So then the question is, okay, well, where do they go from here? Because even though this is an unexpectedly good thing, and I want to point out this too, when you have a Supreme Court that has an ultra-conservative supermajority, you know they're almost never going to do the right thing. The best you can hope for is that they just do no harm. So the best thing that happens is the Supreme Court does not take up the case you're worried about. Or maybe there's a weird split and they dismiss it because maybe someone didn't have standing, so they decide not to weigh in. Because when this court weighs in, especially on culture war issues, it's almost never good news. The Supreme Court is the enemy of the people right now. It usually is, historically speaking. Very rarely in our nation's history has the Supreme Court been the side of goodness. Almost always, the decent judges are in the minority. So in this case, they took the path of least harm. They just said it's split, so the earlier decision stays. But here's what's going to happen now. Maybe St. Isidore tries again, and maybe they try to ask the state for permission to get public funding again as a charter school. And maybe they get another yes from the charter school board. And maybe there's another lawsuit to try to stop it, and it gets back up here. Or more likely, maybe another charter school, maybe another religious school in another state demands to be treated like a charter school, and they just play this game again. This is how the right works. They just try to figure out, how can we get this case back up to the Supreme Court? Same basic facts, but this time we'll make sure Amy Coney Barrett's friend is not involved at all. Because that's really all they have to do. Just get this case, get some school approved for federal funding. Someone's going to sue over it, and we will just appeal that thing all the way to the Supreme Court. And you got to feel confident, if you're a conservative, that even if you lost John Roberts for reasons unknown, you probably have Amy Coney Barrett on your side. So all you need is another case to make this work, and then the whole thing blows up again. So this is a temporary reprieve. It's great news. It's unexpected, but it is what everyone hoped for, which is that the Supreme Court would not weigh in. But every church-state separation organization I know is basically saying, this is great, but also we know damn well this is not the last word on the topic. They will try this again. They always try these things again. So, be vigilant. It's going to happen. But for now, with one sentence, the Supreme Court kind of shocked a lot of the people who follow everything it does, because they fully expected the conservatives to, break the dam when it came to public funding of religious schools, and they didn't yet. And, you never know what's going to happen with the makeup of the court a year from now. It could change, probably for the worse, but it could change, so you never know what happens. So anyway, shocking result today. If you have any questions, happy to hear them right now. Let's see what you got here. I'm glad she followed her ethical obligation to recuse herself. Can't say the same for some other justices. Yeah, Clarence Thomas is not about to recuse himself from anything. Alito will not recuse himself from just about anything. So, yay. you don't have to give credit where it's due to Amy Coney Barrett. She did the bare minimum. But okay, great. I'm glad for once someone in the Trump orbit decided optics matter. And maybe this would be a bad look if she stayed involved in this case. This very close call should scare the living crap out of all of us. The fact that it didn't pass is what's scary. The fact that it almost did is terrifying. Yeah, this is a very important point. This was a very clear-cut case of church-state separation. Should you use public money to fund a private Catholic school that wants to call itself a charter school, but acts like a Catholic school in terms of how they operate? And this is like church-state separation 101. This is not like a trolley problem question you get on the final where, wow, there's a lot of nuance involved. No, there isn't. This is very clear-cut violation of church-state separation. This should have been an 8-0 decision. The fact that it is 4-4 is not great news because it means 4 justices are ready to just ignore church-state separation forever. That is scary. The fact that this celebration is happening is a celebration of the fact that the Supreme Court decided we're not going to do anything. And that is reason for celebration. It could have been worse. You should not have 4 people on the Supreme Court that sees this as anything other than clear-cut church-state separation. So yes, that is scary. You're totally right. No written decision for a 4-4 split and no formal voting announcement. Roberts voted no. Yep, I mean, I showed you the entire ruling. It's very short, and the assumption is Roberts is the one who flipped because none of the other justices, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, they did not suggest anything in oral arguments that made anyone think they would be on the other side of this. Roberts tends to play devil's advocate, but you kind of know where he's going to go, and it turns out he went the opposite direction this time. Probably. They're just going to find a case Barrett won't recuse herself from. That's correct. Yep, I agree. That is what they're going to do, and they're going to try to get this type of case right back up to the court. It's how they work. There is a more dangerous thing that could pass that would make Trump immune to contempt of court. It's the most dangerous thing we face. Trump could do whatever he wants. Yeah, separate from this case, but in general, Trump's basically ignoring anything courts say that he doesn't like. They're not returning people that have been disappeared from the streets that the courts say you can't just take those people and send them into another country. And then who's going to stop the Trump administration from doing whatever it is they're doing? I mean, yeah, we're in a very dangerous spot right now, as many keen observers have said many times over. I don't know how many voters get that, but yeah, we're in a bad spot right now. We're in a bad place. All right, I'm going to jump to a different story. Give me 1 second here. Figured I would follow that up with something a little more fun. Fun? Maybe that's the wrong word. We'll see. Give me 1 second here. All right. We're going to talk about Jerry Falwell Jr. It's been a long time, but he's back in the news this week. And because Jerry Falwell has decided to get back in the news, that means we get to talk about all the reasons he used to be in the news. And I was chatting about this with my podcast co-host earlier, and it was funny because it's been a while since we've talked about Falwell. And when I was reminding her of all the things Jerry Falwell has done in the past, it was the weirdest kind of nostalgia, like, oh, right, I remember that story. That was wild. So if you are not familiar with this guy, let me give you a quick deep dive into why he was in the news for such a long time. Obviously, Jerry Falwell Sr. is the famous evangelist who said horrible things after 9/11. He blamed it on, lesbians and Jews and atheists and things like that. But Jerry Falwell Sr. founded Liberty University. And Jerry Falwell Jr., one of his sons, was the president of that school until a couple of years ago. But for a few years, right before 2020, for a couple of years before 2020, he was in the news for just all kinds of scandals. He was doing all these weird things that put him in the spotlight, and no one could really understand why he's doing all these strange things. Let me run through just a few of the scandals he was involved with, okay? For example, he posted this picture of himself with like his wife's assistant on Instagram, and like his belly's hanging out and she's wearing something that you would be expelled for on Liberty's campus. Again, it's not illegal, but from him, it's kind of weird. So that's one thing he did. Then, oh, check this out. He started liking pictures on Instagram of ladies wearing pretty provocative things. I'm just pointing this out. Liked by Jerry Falwell Jr. This is another picture that someone posted. And again, you zoom in, liked by Jerry Falwell Jr. And again, like, why are you liking these thirst trap pictures? Why is the president of Liberty University using his main account to like these pictures? That's kind of weird, right? Because again, just to remind you, if you don't know about Liberty University, this is a school where at one point anyway, I don't know if this is still the case, but if you hug somebody who is not your wife for like more than 3 seconds, you could get punished for it. If you do anything sexual with anybody who's not your married partner of the opposite sex, you could be expelled. You can't do anything like that. It is forbidden. And here's Jerry Falwell Jr. like, yeah, I'm on Instagram liking these pictures of other people. It's creepy. There was a time when he was opposing face masks that the governor of Virginia had instituted. Everyone has to wear it if you go out in public during COVID. And Jerry Falwell Jr. responded by tweeting a picture of that governor in blackface, which was a scandal that had already happened. But he's like, oh, you want me to wear a mask? Well, here, I'm just going to post this racist image. It's like, that's a non sequitur. That's just weird. Why are you doing that? But that's just where his mind is at. Some parent of a Liberty University student asked him, hey, why is Liberty University in the middle of COVID opening its campus when pretty much the rest of the world is closed? Because that feels kind of dangerous right now. There are no vaccines available. What are we doing? And what did Jerry Falwell say to that parent of a Liberty University student? He said he called that dude a dummy. I forgot what this exact line was in reference to. Like, oh, they'll go off to summer jobs or internships. They're not on campus. I don't remember. But he called that dad a dummy. That's how he treats a tuition-paying person. What else was there? There was the time he censored his own journalists on campus because they were trying to cover things that were happening on the campus of Liberty. And he's like, you can't publish that in the school newspaper because I said so, because I own this place. What else was there? Oh, yes. There was the time he fell down because he was hammered at home and had to go to the hospital. Again, alcohol's not allowed on campus, but here's Jerry Falwell Jr. just getting so drunk that he's falling over and injuring himself. And again, none of these things by themselves are like, I don't care about this dude's private life. I don't. It doesn't matter to me. But it's the hypocrisy of it all. This is a guy who very famously mandated the Liberty Way on campus. And if students break the law, the school rules, they could be kicked out of the school. But here's the president of the university doing all these weird, awful things. And then you get into 2015, 2016. He's the first right-wing Christian to endorse Donald Trump. Like, brought him on campus, I think, like, and said, Donald Trump is not a perfect Christian, but he's going to get my vote. Like, why? What was the point of all that? So that's Jerry Falwell. And that's all the reasons he was in the news until August of 2020, when this article came out in by Reuters, when a guy named Giancarlo Granda, a business partner of Jerry and Becky Falwell, said his affair with an evangelical power couple spanned 7 years. You remember this lovely story? If you don't, let me remind you. Granda was a pool boy in Miami where the Falwells liked to vacation. And as you may have read in a bunch of articles or any number of podcasts, Falwell and his wife met this dude while they were on vacation in 2012. And apparently, the story went, they asked this young man to join them in the bedroom, where he would sleep with Becky Falwell and Jerry would watch from a corner. which again, not judging, don't actually care what they do in the bedroom. It's the hypocrisy of it all. Because again, at Liberty University, you cannot even have someone of the opposite sex in your room. This went on for a while. The affair came to involve sexual text messages, topless photos, and videos. Everything was consensual. But at some point, this guy realized, wait a minute, who's Becky Falwell? And he decides after some time to like Google these people. And he's like, wait, they are going after like gay people. They are very famously anti-gay. And I don't feel comfortable with this anymore. But to keep him in their fold, I guess, Jerry Falwell also began a business relationship with the pool boy, investing millions of dollars in some Miami hostel in a seedy part of town that this guy would then manage. It was strange, but clearly they wanted this guy to feel indebted to them. But in any case, this story went public, and it didn't look great for Jerry Falwell Jr. It didn't. This thing was hilarious, but also it's the hypocrisy of it all. Like, I know way too much about Jerry Falwell Jr.'s sex life, and I don't want to know anything about it. And now I've heard everything about it because I've watched all the documentaries on Netflix and I've listened to the podcasts and all that. So here's where it gets really funny. And I don't know how many of you have followed what happened after that whole scandal. Oh, by the way, there was another scandal where Becky Falwell was apparently also sleeping with a student at Liberty, her son's friend. That's disturbing for other reasons. And there was a rumor, I believe, that one of the reasons Jerry Falwell Jr. endorsed Donald Trump back in the day when he was like the first dude to do it, even though there was an open question of whether conservative Christians could get on board with Donald Trump. I think Trump's attorney, Michael Cohen, had some evidence of what the Falwells were doing in the bedroom, and he basically blackmailed Jerry Falwell, saying, I'm going to go public with this stuff unless you endorse Donald Trump. I don't know how true that is, but like that was a story as well. So after all this, Liberty University decides to get rid of Jerry Falwell. He's not good for their branding right now because every time he's in the news, it's for some ridiculous scandal, right? So what happened later that year, like months after the pool boy scandal broke? Jerry Falwell Jr. sued Liberty University. He sued the school for defamation. He said they were making him look bad, which is hilarious because what? No, dude, the reason you look bad is because your life is out in the public now, and it turns out everything you've ever done is hypocritical. But he was suing the school for defamation, even though the only reason his name was being defamed is because of everything he did. What happened after that? I don't know if I can. There we go. This is just a headline from later that year, and it's gone. Sorry. I can't show you this. There's a headline, damn paywall. In December of 2020, Jerry Falwell just magically dropped that lawsuit. He was suing for defamation, and then he dropped the case entirely. I don't know, maybe because he realized he was the one responsible for all the humiliation he was receiving, which, I don't know, maybe that's another one of his kinks. No judging. Oh. And then in April of 2021, we're still doing this. Liberty University sues him for millions of dollars because they're like, you tarnished our brand. So Liberty sues Jerry Falwell Jr. It's great. This is just get the popcorn. This is amazing. They sued him for $10 million, saying Jerry Falwell Jr. breached his contract, he misled the school's board of directors, and he was concealing his alcohol problem. And then what happened after that? Guess what? Let's see. Now we're getting to November of 2021. November of 2021, Jerry Falwell Jr. revives the defamation lawsuit. He said, yeah, well, you're still making me look bad. I'm resurrecting my lawsuit. Also, you have things of mine that I want back. Let's see. What did he want back here? Let's go. Falwell's countersuit also makes new charges that Liberty has kept some of Falwell's personal property because they banned him and his wife from coming on campus. Since Mr. Falwell's resignation, Liberty has wrongfully possessed and controlled Mr. Falwell's property. Let's see, what's his property? A .38 revolver. He wanted his gun back. He wanted the URL jerryfalwell.com. Let's see, what else? 3 horses. Jerry Falwell wants his 3 horses back, which, given everything I know about that dude's sex life, I don't want to know, man. He just wanted all this stuff back, so he refiled his lawsuit for defamation. This is fun. I mean, nothing screams, I am a conservative Christian, like filing a lawsuit against your fundamentalist Christian college so you can get your guns back. And then, we're not done yet. All of this is going through the courts. In 2023, he sues Liberty again, this time for over $8.5 million. He says, you owe me for retiring. He had retirement benefits, and he's like, you never gave me the money I was owed. And Liberty's like, why the hell would we pay you anything at this point? So he sued them to get his retirement benefits. Wait, that wasn't all. In August of 2023, he also sued Liberty again, saying, how dare you use my father's name, which is my name, and sully our good name. He said Liberty University was using Jerry Falwell's name in their material, and the Falwell, what did it call? The Falwell Family Trust or something? The Falwell Trust, which holds a trademark on his father's name, likeness, and intellectual property. I don't know about intellectual property. You're not allowed to use that phrase when talking about the Falwells. But Jerry Jr. is saying you can't use my father's name because you need to pay us for the use of my father's name, even though he founded the university. I don't know what the legal qualifications are for that case, but there you go. He says you can't use our trademark or something like that. He wanted the school to pay the Falwell Family Trust $7 million to use his daddy's name for the next 4 years. Like, do you know how many pool boys you would need to clean up the mess that Jerry Falwell made at this point? And then, after all this, and I forgot all of this happened, I swear. In July of last year, 2024, out of nowhere, Liberty University and Jerry Falwell issue a press release. Jerry Falwell Jr., former president of Liberty University, and the school's trustees reach global settlement agreement. Very weird. Look at this. The two sides announced today that they have reached a global resolution agreement settling all outstanding disputes on both legal and personal matters. Basically, with all these lawsuits flying around, both sides announced we're done. No lawsuits. They're all gone. No one's suing anybody anymore. They sincerely regret the lengthy and painful litigation process, and they each take responsibility for their part in the disputes. I am not really sure why Liberty University needs to apologize for very much here. Feel like Jerry Falwell Jr. is kind of the dude doing all the problems. Like, if my son makes a mess in the kitchen, we don't need to issue a compromise settlement agreement. I have nothing to apologize for. I'm the one trying to clean up the mess. Falwell acknowledges and apologizes for the errors in judgment and mistakes made during his time of leadership, which is a very euphemistic way of saying, I'm sorry I sat in the corner while my wife was having sex with a young man. And the Board of Trustees acknowledge and apologize for the errors and mistakes made on their part as well. Who was their pool boy? We will never know. The trustees in Falwell are committed to move forward in a spirit of forgiveness and with the hope of reconciliation in a Christ-honoring manner. Yes, they're going to move forward and only participate in Christ-honoring cucking. Don't make me say that. Because they agree that further comment on the lawsuits and their resolution is neither necessary nor constructive, they plan on making no further statements. Yeah, it's not necessary or constructive for us to say anymore. So, don't ask us any questions about this ever. And honestly, the weird thing is this was last July. Neither side has said anything since that time about the settlement. Like, they've just kind of gone their own path. I mentioned that Liberty had banned Jerry Falwell Jr. from coming on their campus and his wife from coming on their campus. Well, guess what? Homecoming last fall, both Falwells appeared on campus. Like they were allowed to visit the school during homecoming, which, I'm sure Becky Falwell loved it. But so they kind of let bygones be bygones and move forward. They have a new president now. Okay. I guess they can use the Falwell name again. Jerry Falwell Sr., skip the next one. We'll go from there. So why are we talking about this now? I know that was a long setup, but come on. How can you not rehash everything Jerry Falwell Jr. did? So the reason this is a story is that this week, USA Today's Chris Quintana, he got access somehow to Liberty University's tax returns. Like every year, Liberty University as a nonprofit has to make that public. But when I checked this week, they were not available on any of the sites where they post like the Form 990s for various nonprofits. So like to me, I was just thinking, well, I guess they haven't filed it yet or it's not public yet. Well, he got access to it. And I've now seen it on other sites. But what he found in that document is that buried in the middle of it, like it's a 130-page document, and on page like 107, I will show you this right here because I have it now too. Check out what they have on page 107. This is just, Liberty University's tax returns, and we're just looking at the bottom here. This is a very interesting paragraph that says where some of their money went. A global resolution agreement was reached last summer in which Liberty withdrew its objection to Jerry Falwell Jr.'s retirement plan, blah, blah, blah. And look at the fourth line here. Agreed to a payment schedule for $5.55 million to Mr. Falwell to settle certain claims and close certain transactions, which payments are made per the schedule and subsequent whatever. In addition, as of June of 2024, Liberty accrued for the settlement of the disputed claims, blah, blah, blah. They mentioned $440,000. That is how much Jerry Falwell Jr. owes the school, but they're going to give him $5.5 million. And something that is also in this report is that, remember how Jerry Falwell Jr. wanted like $10 million in a retirement package? Well, guess what? The school's giving him that stuff too. This is from the USA Today article that summarized all this. Let me show you this. Buried deep, which, by the way, great phrase for a story involving the pool boy and Becky. Buried deep in a recently filed 2023-2024 tax form, the university revealed is paying Falwell a multi-million-dollar figure to settle certain claims and close certain transactions. And as part of the agreement, Falwell will pay the university $440,000 to settle disputed expenses, whatever those are. We don't know any details, but look at this. In total, Falwell will get roughly $5.5 million to settle the lawsuits, in addition to roughly $9.7 million he already received as part of his retirement package. Falwell is getting $15 million and then some to basically go the hell away and drop your lawsuits against us. Nice chunk of change if you can get it. Lots of pool boys that will pay for. And guess what? The school's not commenting on it. They're just saying, hey, we already issued a statement last year that said it would not be constructive for us to comment anymore. USA Today did reach out to Jerry Falwell Jr., and he definitely had a statement about this, though. Jerry Falwell Jr. said he was very pleased with the outcome of the settlement negotiations and with the final settlement. Like, yeah, of course he was. I'm sure he was very happy with it. So that's what it takes to get rid of Jerry Falwell Jr. $15 million is what the school paid. That's where their tuition money is going. It's to pay off Jerry Falwell Jr. for basically annoying the crap out of them and making their school a laughingstock, because you can't say the word pool boy without thinking Liberty and just laughing at anyone whose diploma says that word as well. I want to bring up one other thing, though, because there is actually one lawsuit, and this has nothing to do with Jerry Falwell, but this is just worth pointing out. Last year, March of 2024, I did a story about this back at the time, But the Department of Education imposed a $14 million fine against Liberty University for what are called Clery Act violations. And in essence, the government under Joe Biden, they said Liberty created a culture where students were afraid to report sexual violence. And the school didn't do enough to let students know about threats on campus. And you could see this in the press release from the Department of Education. They announced that the Office of Federal Student Aid is imposing a $14 million fine as a result of a settlement agreement with Liberty University because they violated this law. And this is the largest fine ever imposed for violating the Clery Act, which requires institutions to provide important information about public safety issues to current students, parents, employees, prospective students, etc. Yeah, it was an unsafe campus. They were not giving students the information they needed to keep themselves safe from sexual predators. And so the Department of Education fined them $14 million. Why is the government allowed to go after a private Christian university like that? Because Liberty takes federal money for student loans. And the government has an obligation to make sure those loans are actually going to a good education. I mean, it's Liberty, so an education, but the government gets some oversight here. And this has nothing to do with their religion. This is all about keeping students safe on campus. And you could see this is a settlement agreement. Liberty agreed to the fine. But the reason I bring this up is because last month, literally a month ago, and I talked about this recently, Attorney General Pam Bondi said she was bringing together a task force to eradicate anti-Christian bias in the federal government. Do you remember this? They had their first meeting last month, and I just want to point this out right here. Who was present at this meeting of anti-Christian bias? Scott Hicks, the provost and chief academic officer at Liberty University. Why? Because he was describing how Liberty University and another school, which we'll talk about later, were singled out by the Biden administration for fines due to the school's Christian worldview. This guy, Scott Hicks, was at this meeting saying the Biden University came after Liberty because we're Christian, which is obviously not true. They went after Liberty because Liberty wasn't keeping students safe on campus, and that's why they got the fine. But the reason he brought this up is because he's trying really hard to make the Department of Education under Donald Trump and the wrestling lady, Linda McMahon, take away that $14 million fine. So I don't know if that's going to happen. It hasn't yet. But I suspect that the next time you see Liberty in the news will probably be because the Trump administration decides, oh yeah, that was totally anti-Christian bias, so we're going to just Control Z on that fine we gave you, and you don't have to pay it anymore, and we're going to rip up that settlement agreement that we already agreed to. And that means Liberty won't have to do any more to keep students safe. But I think Liberty might have learned a lesson from Jerry Falwell Jr., which is that if you just loudly complain about how you're being persecuted, and you know damn well the other side is more interested in just making the problem go away than actually doing what's right, they will eventually give you whatever you want. So Liberty gave Jerry Falwell Jr. whatever he wanted, and it seems likely to me that the Trump administration is going to give Liberty whatever it wants and make that fine go away too. So just wanted to add that on. I will stop there. What questions do we have about the pool boy? Thanks for that donation, Cat Daddy. I appreciate it. Let me guess, the terms of the settlement were not disclosed. They were not. This is between Liberty and Jerry Falwell Jr. They were not disclosed last July, and until we saw this little bit in the tax return, no one knew anything about the terms of the settlement. They didn't know Falwell got anything for retirement. They didn't know he got anything to make the lawsuits go away. Turns out he did, and quite a lot. So what did they pay the poor pool boy? They paid her in Becky Falwells over and over for many years. Imagine if people would just mind their own business. No one would care about Falwell if he wasn't such a hypocrite. This is my point. Yes. I mean, again, it's a scandal, but I honestly, I know you won't believe me when I say this. I don't care what the Falwells do in their bedroom. I don't care what kinks they have. It doesn't matter. It doesn't. It's juicy gossip, but like it really doesn't matter. And honestly, I don't think anyone else should know about this stuff. It's up to them. It's their bedroom. As long as it's all consensual, and it looks like it was, I don't really care. The only reason any of this is a story is because Jerry Falwell ran a school that would literally kick students out if they did so much as spent a night with their fiance in the dorm room before they were married. Like, and that's not even getting into what they would do if you were in a same-sex relationship, right? Because that's definitely not allowed. But apparently, watching from the corner while a pool boy goes after your wife, that's totally what Jesus wanted. I still love this group. I don't talk much, but I enjoy this group's banter every week. I assume you are not talking about me, but that is all Den and the commenters, and I love you all. You all have your fun while I'm talking, and so I appreciate the community we have built here. All right, give me a second to close out all these tabs, and now I'm going to have people investigating my computer because of all the tabs I have open about Jerry Falwell Jr. All right, let me pull up another story here. All right. This is another story where I was not expecting any sort of updates on this. I actually saw a friend say, wow, I can't believe that case just ended. And I'm like, what case are you even talking about? And he sends me an email with the details. I'm like, oh, this case. I totally forgot about this case. So I'm going to tell you about this case because there's a resolution to it. And to make sense of what I'm going to talk about, you have to go back to 2014. That's how long this legal battle I'm going to talk about has been going on. But in 2014, there was a police department in Ocala, Florida, and they posted this on Facebook. I know it's not exactly the clearest writing, but this is an image they posted on Facebook. Basically, what happened is that in their city, there had been some gun violence. There was like a shooting spree. Kids got hurt. It was awful. And the chief of police in that city posted this letter on Facebook, and you could see what it says. We're facing a crisis in the city of Ocala and Marion County that requires fervent prayer and your presence to show unity and help in this senseless crime spree that is affecting our communities. ... I'm urging you all to please support a very important community prayer vigil that will be held here. What this is a government-sponsored prayer that the chief of police is urging people in the community to attend, which obviously, what the hell are you doing? That's not your job. And I have no problem with a prayer vigil. If a local church wanted to hold a prayer vigil, I might roll my eyes, but like, there's nothing wrong with that if people want to do that. I am a little bothered, not by the church-state separation thing, but by the idea that a chief of police thinks that prayer is the best solution to stop crime in his community. As if, what's the alternative? Waving a white flag? No. He could have asked the community to do better at reporting suspicious activity, or called on politicians in Florida to enforce and pass tougher gun safety laws. He could have demanded state legislators provide more funding for his department so they can do more. I mean, I don't like that, but okay, fine. Or he could have looked for ways to get people out of poverty so that some of them don't feel like they need to resort to crime. There's a lot of ways you can address crime that don't involve, let's all get together and say some magic words. But he went with God. And again, you can roll your eyes at it, but the bottom line is what he was putting out there is illegal. Because why is the government telling people to do anything religious? That's not what any government official should be doing. And again, there's value to community unity toward a common cause, but it's not his job to promote prayer. It's definitely not okay for the chief of police to use like official letterhead and post on the police department's official Facebook page, hey, we're encouraging everybody to come pray with us. Weird. So there were letters sent. The American Humanist Association wrote a letter to the city saying, you're not allowed to do this. We know you're going through a rough time, but also you should remove that prayer request. And we hope you will reassure us that you're not going to do this again in the future. Obviously, they made clear if individual cops want to pray on their own time, if they want to attend the vigil, totally fine. But a government entity cannot promote religion. Seems kind of obvious. And guess what happened when they sent that request? Nothing. Nothing happened. They never responded to it. In fact, I even showed you what the police department posted on Facebook. You know why? Because they still haven't taken it down all these years later. So that's still up. So after the police department does nothing, some local residents complained to the city's mayor, Kent Gwynn. And what did Kent Gwynn respond to some of those people complaining? He said to them, "There's nothing in the Constitution to prohibit us from having this vigil. Not only are we not canceling it, we are trying to promote it and have as many people as possible to join us. We open every council meeting with the prayer, and we end the prayer in Jesus' name we pray. Our seal says, God be with us, and we pray that he is and us with him." So this dude really doesn't get it. He's like, what? You think we're violating church-state separation? That's impossible. We violate that all the time. It's just what we do here in this city. So that's not a good response from the mayor. But clearly, they're not doing anything to assure the church-state separation crowd that they're not going to do this. So after all those warnings, the American Humanist Association filed a lawsuit against this city and against the police department. This is November of 2014. And they basically said, look, this is a constitutional violation. They said the department is supporting this revivalist event where officers prayed, sang religious songs, and delivered Christian sermons. They cited the Facebook post written on official department letterhead, signed by the police chief and a local Baptist leader. And this took a number of twists and turns over the course of years. But in 2016, a U.S. district judge chimed in, and he basically said, yeah, the American Humanist Association is right. This is from page 60 of the judge's ruling. In sum, under the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, the government cannot initiate, organize, sponsor, or conduct a community prayer vigil. That's what happened here, right? The same event in private hands would be protected, right? But there's a crucial difference between government speech endorsing religion, which the Establishment Clause forbids, and private speech endorsing religion, which is totally fine. In this way, the rights of all citizens, religious and non-religious, are preserved. And he basically said, yeah, you're not allowed to do the prayer vigil anymore, right? And at the time, you would think, we're done now, right? End of story, the judge weighed in. Now, I want to point out, that was page 60 of a 62-page ruling. When he explained why he got to this decision, that judge pointed out, his name, by the way, is Judge Timothy Corrigan. What Corrigan said is, how do I know this is crossing the church-state separation line? Well, there's something called the Lemon test. And if you Wikipedia this, what is the Lemon test? There's basically 3 things we can test to see whether something crosses the line. Step 1, anything you do must have a secular purpose. Any statute must have a secular purpose. 2, it cannot advance or prohibit religion. And 3, it has to avoid excessive government entanglement with religion. And so this judge went through that list and he said, well, the prayer vigil obviously has a religious purpose. It's a prayer vigil. That was easy. He said, of course, this is an endorsement of religion, prong 2. Like, clearly, you're promoting religion. And because the police department invited the community to attend the prayer vigil, there was entanglement. So there's strike 3. And given the formal involvement of the police chaplains, he added, the entanglement was excessive. So if you screwed up any one of those prongs, you violated church-state separation and it was illegal. But he said you violated all 3 of them, so what you did is totally illegal. And that's why he said, yeah, you broke the law. So the end result of that is that the plaintiffs in the case, the church-state separation side, they got a grand total of $6, basically symbolic because this was not about the money, and the taxpayers of Ocala would have to pay the legal bills for the American Humanist Association. That's the bigger win. So here's the thing. Then, after that decision came down, the right-wing legal system sprang into action. So, I'm going to jump ahead to 2022. The right-wing legal groups are asking the Supreme Court to step in here And they're asking the Court of Appeals to step in and reverse that ruling. They are saying that the atheists are trying to shut down protected First Amendment gatherings. They actually filed a legal brief with the appellate court that said, listen, of course that prayer vigil was legal because there was no coercion. No one had to participate. Of course, there was neutrality. Oh, and also the people who sued did not have standing to sue. And the establishment clause is on our side. Like, by their logic, any police department in the country could hang a giant cross on their front door and put a 10 Commandments monument in the lobby of the police department, but none of that would count as promotion of Christianity because they're not forcing you to worship their religion. Like, it made no sense whatsoever. Unfortunately, their appeal was successful. They successfully overturned Judge Corrigan's decision. And this appellate court with 3 Republican-appointed judges said, yeah, we're going to overturn it. Now, why did they do that? Basically, what they said is, in the years between when that, lawsuit was filed and now, this ultra-conservative Supreme Court has weighed in on a lot of church-state separation matters. And specifically, do you remember that football coach who wanted to do these showboaty public prayers at midfield after games? In that decision in Kennedy v. Bremerton, the Supreme Court basically said the Lemon test is dead. You can't use that anymore as a way to decide if something crosses a line. And so the appellate court said, we're going to undo that judge's decision that said the prayer vigil is illegal. We're going to send this case back to that judge with a clear instruction that we want you to rethink whether or not this is illegal, but you're not allowed to use the Lemon test. Maybe you should consider something else, like, is it tradition to do this? What about historical practices and understandings? Why don't you use a more vague definition to see if this might be legal? And so they kicked this back to that judge. And what happened after all that? Well, before it got to that judge, the right-wing justices are like, hey, before you send this back to that first judge who was not on our side, can we get the Supreme Court to just weigh in on this? And they asked the Supreme Court, take up this case, even though they had no reason to step in. And the Supreme Court, look at this. I want to show you this. They issued a statement. If I could find this here. This is from Neil Gorsuch, who weighed in on this at the time. Neil Gorsuch said, the city asks us to take this case to make this point that what they did was legal. It is an understandable request, but I have no idea why you're asking us to intervene right now. The 11th Circuit has already sent it back to the district court to consider, how do you weigh in on this without the Lemon test, the Kennedy implications? Yeah, I would allow that process to unfold. And then Gorsuch adds, moving forward, I expect that lower courts will recognize that just because someone's offended by the prayer, that's ridiculous and we shouldn't consider that. If I'm wrong, the city is free to seek relief here after final judgment. By now, it should be clear that, anyone can be offended, blah, blah, blah. Gorsuch is saying, I would love to weigh in on this, but also it's not my time yet. Send it back down to the first court. So anyway, they sent it back down to the first court. Clarence Thomas, by the way, also weighed in and said, come on, you guys, I really want to take up this case right now. I don't know why these other people on the Supreme Court won't let me, but I think I'm ready to weigh in already. So good news, Supreme Court did not weigh in. Bad news is now this was back down to Timothy Corrigan. And so now we cut to June of 2024. Okay, June of 2024, that judge, Timothy Corrigan, weighs in again. And this time, what he says is the city is arguing that religion in politics is tradition. They pray at city council meetings and all that. So maybe a prayer vigil isn't illegal. Look what the judge says at this point. The city's examples of government historical involvement with prayer are distinguishable, right? We know the Supreme Court says you can have invocation prayers and whatnot, but look at this. Unlike legislative prayer, the prayer vigil was directed at the public and asked for public participation. Moreover, the prayer vigil was the event. And it's not like a legislative prayer where prayer is a side hustle or something. That doesn't involve prayers that were tangential or meant to solemnize other public business. The prayer vigil is the thing. So it's not, you can't compare it to what they do at city council meetings. That's ridiculous. Just to cut to the chase, he said, you want me to use the tradition argument? Well, there's no tradition here. There's no tradition of sponsoring prayer vigils. So you don't get to compare it to that. And he said, I want to find this here. Check this out. Based on the undisputed facts, the city's involvement in conceiving, organizing, and implementing the prayer vigil is government sponsorship of a religious event. The content of the Facebook letter and the flyer confirm this. So this judge is saying, fine, I won't use the lemon test. I'm just going to read the First Amendment that says you can't have an establishment of religion. And what was this? This was an establishment of religion. So he's like, fine, I won't use your little test that you say is dead now. I will just go off of the Constitution, and you're still wrong. And this is still government endorsement of religion. He said one other thing I want to point out here. This is glorious. As the Kennedy decision commands, the court bases its decision on a historically sensitive understanding of the Establishment Clause. So he's saying, I'm going to do the historically sensitive understanding, and I come to this conclusion. Where government action amounts to sponsorship of or favoritism toward a religious belief system, it violates the Establishment Clause. That is what happened here. So once again, the same judge is like, fine, the prayer vigil is still illegal. I don't care what test you want me to use. If I can't use the one I used last time, I'll use a different one. Either way, you're wrong. So that was a great decision. That was last year. That was amazing. It means Ocala still violated the law. What does that mean in practice? No one gets any money, really. This is all about, well, the city's going to have to pay the legal fees for the American Humanist Association and the lawyers. And more importantly, because they've now had to do this for so many years, that is so much money. The city and the taxpayers are now going to have to pay to the lawyers on the other side. It was kind of incredible, like that decision happened. But then the question came up, well, the Supreme Court's really right-wing, and the appellate courts are really right-wing. So is the city just going to appeal this ruling again? Are they going to try to get this back up to the Supreme Court and just say, well, we don't like that you said this violated the Establishment Clause. We want the Supreme Court to say you're wrong, and that just because you sponsored a prayer vigil, that doesn't violate the Establishment Clause. But in order to do that, you would have to file a brief with the appellate court. You would have to file a brief with the Supreme Court if you didn't like what the appellate court said. You have to do a lot of work, and you could still lose. And that's still a lot of money and time for your lawyers. And so this is one of those things, like, I was afraid they were totally going to do this because this is totally a culture war issue. And there's a lot of right-wing groups who are like, we'll do the work for free. Just let us have a crack at this. Even if they lose, though, the city is the one that would pay the price. They're the ones who would have to pay out the money. So this is what's amazing. Why do I bring all this up? I know that's a long setup. The reason I bring this up is because recently, actually this week, the Ocala City Council decided to vote on a settlement agreement between both sides. And this is what's amazing. The two sides, the right-wing people that said this prayer vigil is legal, and the church-state separation side that still maintains it was illegal, apparently they came to the table and agreed to a compromise. And the compromise says, we are going to allow the judge's ruling, Judge Corrigan's second ruling, to be the last word on the issue, that the prayer vigil was illegal. We're not going to appeal it. No one's going to appeal. It's done now. We will stop fighting. And also, the city will not have to pay the lawyers for the American Humanist Association. So basically, the church-state separation side says, listen, if we agree to drop the bill, we won't ask you to pay us anything. Will you stop challenging this to the Supreme Court? Which, honestly, given the makeup of the Supreme Court, like, that makes sense to me. And if you're the right wing, you're saying, if you're the city, you're thinking, even if right-wing groups want to fight this, we could lose and we'd be on the hook for a lot more money. let's just take the loss and just call it a day. And then we're done with this and we don't even have to pay any money. So it's a win-win for all sides. That's what the city council got to vote on this week. And the city's attorney, his name is William Sexton, one of the things he told the city council before they voted, check this out from a local article. He said estimates for the potential liability associated with those fees if they keep fighting this, particularly if this case were to continue on appeal, have approached and even exceeded $1 million. He says if this city keeps fighting this in court and takes it to the Supreme Court and we lose, we could be on the hook for $1 million or more. And I want to play you a clip here. One of the city council members, his name is Jay Musley. He explained to the other city council members why he was willing to take this offer. It's just a minute long. Let me show you what he said.
I'll make a comment. I've been involved in this case the entire time. Never should have gotten this lawsuit. We need to get out of the daggum lawsuit. I believe in God. I believe He's our Savior. We don't need to stay in this lawsuit to prove that, okay? It's $1 million gamble, and I'm not going to make $1 million gamble with the taxpayers' money on something that we may or may not win. I'm sorry, Kent, Rock, I like you guys a lot. I don't think you graduated from law school. I sat, and I didn't either, but I sat and listened to all these attorneys talk, asked them specific questions. This is a very losable lawsuit on our behalf, okay? It is losable. It is not a slam dunk win. Therefore, we got the chance to settle. We're admitting nothing. We're paying nothing. We're accepting no liability. It's the smartest decision I made up here in 13 years.
Very convincing argument. And he shouted out two people who had, including the former mayor of Ocala, the guy who said, yeah, we totally pray all the time in the city. He said, look, you guys are great, but this is stupid. Let's not do this. And after he made that speech, the city of Ocala, in a unanimous vote, the city council agreed to drop its appeal and allow the lower court ruling against the city to stand. In exchange, the city doesn't have to pay attorney's fees or court costs for the other side. Like I said, win-win for everybody. It means this little gambit doesn't get in front of higher courts where they could try to make some law change that says, yeah, government-endorsed prayers are legal now. The American Humanist Association, their executive director, Fish Stark, what he said to me, for us, this case was always about principle. It is never appropriate for the state to use taxpayer dollars to promote one set of religious beliefs over another. And he added, we are vindicated by this outcome. So huge win for the church-state separation side. And again, going back to what I said at the beginning of the segment, when I heard, wait, there's a settlement in the Ocala case? What the hell was the Ocala case? Because it's been years since I've thought about it, because this thing has just taken its sweet time in the courts. So it took over 10 years. The church-state separation side basically won. And now the other side is saying, we give up. Just don't make us pay you anything and we will stop fighting this. And the church-state separations crowd said, yeah, that's fine. Just take the loss. We'll move on. Let's go our separate ways. So great ending to this story. And congratulations to the side of church-state separation and the American Humanist Association for pulling that out. What questions we got here? Were there representatives from every religion in the community? You mean during the prayer vigil, were there representatives from every religion in the community? I believe the answer was no. Like, there were Christian sermons given by the participants. And if there was anyone else there, it certainly wasn't like advertised that way. It's not like they were going to kick out a Muslim who showed up. But as far as I know, they didn't go out and ask local non-Christian religious leaders or humanist leaders to be a part of it. Which, by the way, had they done that, might have been legal. That's not what they did. If prayer worked, the red states wouldn't be at the bottom of all the lists. No kidding, man. Whether it's education or healthcare, like, it's not great to live in a red state. And, there's a lot of leopards eating my faces on that subreddit. There's a lot of stuff coming from red state people who are like, what? The government's taken away my FEMA? That's not going to end well this summer after hurricane season. Like, yeah, well, why would you vote for these people? Like Marjorie Taylor Greene's district is not better served with her being their representative. You know what I mean? It sounds like a distraction tactic to shift away from his job not getting done. Yeah, the police chief basically saying, let's all pray. Clearly, the reason there was this gun problem in the first place is because they didn't pray hard enough. And so the police chief is like, you guys, we need more prayer. Why are you all looking at me? You think I'm here to keep you safe? No, that's God's job. Let's ask God to help us out. Like, then why are we funding your department if you're not doing your job? How dare we suggest that the governing bodies and law enforcement actually do something besides having a chat about it with their imaginary friend? I know that I don't get it. I don't get what a prayer vigil sponsored by the police department is basically them saying, listen, we have no ideas and we're not going to put any more thought into it. So we give up. Like, that's it. Have at it, people who are criminals. City's all yours. All we got is prayer. It's a horrible optics. If violating the Establishment Clause is a tradition, then can't we argue anything against argue against anything the GOP wants by saying not already having that is a tradition? I'm sure there's some logical explanation. I'm sure there is a logic to that, but the answer is no, you can't argue anything you want because hypocrisy doesn't matter. It's just the courts are just doing whatever Republicans want. That's the legal system we have now. There is no rhyme or reason to what they're doing. There are no rules in place. Like, rules that apply to Democrats do not apply to Republicans. That's just the way it works right now. So, like, there is no actual legal system. I have to wonder how they teach all this stuff in law school right now. How do you teach students, like, here's how you interpret the Constitution and parse the way the Supreme Court has analyzed the Constitution when there's no logical process to anything the Supreme Court's doing right now? Like, it doesn't make any sense. I don't know. I'd argue over 200 years of history of secular law and separation of church and state is tradition. You would think, but again, rules don't matter. They can just make up whatever they want. And if the law says Jesus existed and Jesus signed the Constitution, like if they use David Barton logic, which is just making up American history, you can say tradition is whatever crazy Christians say it is. It's not like they're asking historians what tradition is. Do you remember in that Bremerton decision, Sonia Sotomayor even pointed out all the facts of the case that you are basing your decision on are wrong. And she included pictures in her rebuttal. Unfortunately, she was in the minority, so it didn't really matter. But that's the thing, that logical consistency doesn't matter to these conservative judges. Thank you for that donation. Apropos of nothing, I wonder what the hours of public lawyer time to patient-provided healthcare ratio would be. Ooh, what are we even talking about here? Like, those public lawyers are doing a lot of work in terms of defending the indefensible. I'm not sure where you're going with that. I'm going to skip this because I don't know what we're talking about. All right, I'm going to jump to the next story. Let me see. Okay, give me 1 second to close up some tabs here. All right. Do you all remember this guy? I talked about him literally a couple of weeks ago. This is Robert Morris. He is a megachurch pastor at Gateway Church. Where was that? Gateway Church. I think it's in Texas. I forgot. Yeah, Dallas, Texas. But basically, the reason we talked about this guy not that long ago is this is a pastor who helped Donald Trump get elected. He is Donald Trump in 2016. He released a list of his evangelical executive advisory board. And they were like almost all white male Christians who would be guiding him. Well, Robert Morris was on that list. Robert Morris is a guy who says prayers can cure infertility. That's not how it works. He says it's scientifically impossible to be an atheist. He says trans people are a threat to children. Keep that one in mind for a second. And Trump even visited this guy's church in 2020 to talk about race relations and the economy. Yikes. But that's how close this guy was to Donald Trump, and that's how powerful he was as an evangelical Christian leader. And the reason I talked about him, and I'll just include a link below if you want to hear the guy's full story, is that a couple of years ago, this guy, Robert Morris, was accused by a woman who said, this guy sexually abused me when I was a little girl. And she said, I was only 12 years old when he started abusing me. It lasted several years. And now she said she's much older. She has a sense of, right and wrong, and like, oh, what he did to me wasn't just wrong, it was illegal. And she wanted to make that public. One of the interesting things about that story is she said she actually tried to make a thing of this in 2005. She wanted to file a civil lawsuit against Robert Morris. And Robert Morris's attorney said, well, first of all, it was your fault because you were being, quote, flirtatious. She was 12 at the time. And also in that civil lawsuit, she asked him for $50,000. And he said, no, we're not doing that. We will give you $25,000, but only if you sign a non-disclosure agreement and never talk about this again. And she said, hell no, didn't sign it. And then more recently, she started talking about this case publicly. And what happened after all of that? Because the incidents that she brought up happened in the state of Oklahoma, Oklahoma's Attorney General, Gentner Drummond, the guy who's weirdly okay with church-state separation, relatively speaking, he decided to go after this guy. He said the statute of limitations has not expired because we only learned about this now or whatever. And the reason I talked about Robert Morris a couple of weeks ago is because he was finally indicted on 5 counts of basically sexually abusing a child. And again, I went through all the details of that last time, so I won't rehash all of that right now, but it was very disturbing. So where are we at right now with this dude? He's made 1 court appearance. He is set to appear in court again in September. September 4th is his next court date. And keep in mind, even 1 charge of sexually abusing a child, that could be punishable with 20 years in prison. This guy has 5 charges of that stuff. So he may spend the rest of his life behind bars, but there is a long legal process before that's a done deal. It is possible he is allowed to avoid jail time altogether if there are no other, incidents like this. Plenty of white evangelical leaders have escaped serious consequences for their crimes. And I'm sure his lawyers are going to argue, come on, he's a good Christian man. Why would you want to punish him? But in the meantime, the reason I bring him up again is because there's another Hi, sorry about that. I don't know what just happened. Den, can you let me know really quickly when I conked out, and I will resume what I was saying. And give me 1 second here to pull up what I was doing here. There we go. So I'll pick it up. I'm sure I'll splice it again a little later. But basically, after Robert Morris has now been indicted for like 5 of these crimes, he could spend the rest of his life in jail, and we'll see how that turns out. But in the meantime, and this was first posted, I believe, by the Roy's Report, which is a Christian website, there is a lawsuit Robert Morris filed against the church because he's apparently demanding that the church pay him his retirement package. And because this lawsuit goes into details about the retirement package, we get to know what his retirement package is. We get a copy of the contract, and I'm going to show you what this lawsuit actually says. Check this out right here. Here we go. This is a lawsuit. Gateway Church is suing Robert Morris, and they're basically saying, we don't want to go through the arbitration he wants. We need a secular court to step in. But check this out. Shortly after his resignation, because, he did a thing with a child, Morris requested that Gateway pay him $1 million and fully fund his retirement to the tune of $600,000 to $800,000 per year for the rest of his and his wife's lives. And the church said no, because you broke the contract, and also you're not sorry about any of this. Unbelievable. This guy wants the church to give him $1 million on top of $600,000 to $800,000 a year for the rest of his life. What the hell is going on here? He says, that's the contract I signed, and so you have to obey the contract. Turns out, being a pastor with no ethics is such a good job if you can get it, and I encourage all of you to go get that job. But basically, Gateway's like, we're not giving you anything because in our contract, it says you don't get these retirement benefits if you resign or if you're fired due to certain immoral or criminal conduct. And one of the things they say here, look at this footnote, which made me laugh. And I know none of this is funny, but look at this footnote right here. Those problems, like that you could be fired for, those problems include the fact that Morris's agreement with Gateway preclude him from future retirement benefits if he resigns or is terminated due to certain immoral or criminal conduct. Gateway believes that Morris's resignation based on child sex crimes plainly fits within that category. Like, yeah, we think you did something immoral, so, we're not going to pay you the money. They said they were willing to work with him to resolve some of these issues before they learned the specifics of what he did. But the fact that he was so unapologetic made them not want to work with him at all. And so the reason this is even in court is because Morris says when there is a contract dispute, we have already agreed to go through Christian arbitration, like some faith-based ministry that handles arbitration and settles this. That way we don't have to do it in front of the courts and the public. We could do it privately with Jesus. But the company that he says we got to work with, the church says that's not the company we agreed to a long time ago. And so they're now going to the actual courts saying, we need you to put a stop to this fake arbitration that we don't want any part of. And that's why we know all this stuff. So while the specifics of the argument can get tedious, and I don't know enough about contract law to tell you who's right and who's wrong, though I feel like the church is in the right to say we don't have to give this guy any money because look at what he did. But it's the audacity of his demands that's getting attention. This guy was getting paid way too much to begin with, and now he's demanding that the church give him what was promised to him in perpetuity, even though the only reason he lost his job is because, again, he sexually abused a child and then lied to everyone about it. Right? It is unbelievable. The church is requesting, among other things, that Robert Morris be honest about the fact that he began sexually abusing this girl when she was 12 and not in her early teens, as he said earlier. Not that that's any better. And they also want him to publicly apologize for what he did to her and what he did to the reputation of the church. And they want Robert Morris to stop saying something he has said repeatedly, which is, listen, the elders of the church all knew about the abuse and the girl's age, but they forgave me, and that's why I'm allowed to be a pastor here. They're like, we did not know what you did exactly, and we definitely did not know her age, so we want you to stop telling that lie. And so they're saying, if you want any chance of reconciliation and getting any of this money, those are the terms you have to agree with. And anyway, he's like, I don't have to do anything. You owe me. You signed the contract. So at this point, let him fight. neither side comes out looking good in all this. This guy wasn't worth the salary even before the allegations came to light. The people who run Gateway Church were totally by this guy's side when he was merely a cruel, MAGA-loving bigot. And they fully deserve whatever drama he's causing them now. But it's like, look at this headline from one of the articles about this. This is from the Roy's report. Gateway Church rejects Robert Morris's demand for millions in benefits. Unbelievable that this dude, after what he did, is going back to the church and saying, yeah, so I did something to a little girl. Anyway, where's my check? You owe me, and this church and all the money that people give to this church, that should be in my pocket right now. Because I don't know, what's this dude going to do with that sort of money? I don't want to know. One other side note of here is that Gateway Church and Robert Morris are also in court separately from all this on the same side for a totally different reason. And I mentioned this the last time I did a video on this guy. They're asking the court to toss out a lawsuit that 4 church members who used to attend Gateway filed because they say Morris misused our tithe money, and he made a money-back guarantee in 2022 where he said, if you don't like the way we're spending your tithe money at this church, just ask for your money back and we'll give it to you. And they said, well, we don't like what he's doing with the money and we want it back. And the church was like, yeah, you're not getting your money back. They're literally in court fighting about that on the same side, Robert Morris and Gateway Church. So again, like, let him fight. So he lied when he said there was a money-back guarantee. He lied about assaulting this child. I don't know why. Maybe that's what Jesus taught him to do. That lawsuit is still ongoing, but this guy is asking for like millions and millions of dollars. The contract says you have to give me close to $1 million every year for the rest of my life. But if I die early, then you just got to keep giving that money to my wife until she dies. That's the church contract. That's like, if you told me that the CEO of Apple had that contract, I'd be like, that's way too much money to give anybody. That's a ridiculous thing. This is the head of a nonprofit church who is making these demands. Utterly ridiculous. I don't know. Crazy story. All right, what questions we got here? Don't those contracts usually get voided when the guy does heinous crimes? I thought so. I'm sure they had some clause in there that said, like, yeah, but if the guy is arrested and charged and he's going to be in prison because of what he did to a little girl, maybe the financial package gets crossed out. It is also possible that because these are churches, they don't know enough about how these contracts work and they didn't go to the right people when they initially signed the contract. I assume mega churches are better at this now. But again, this is where you need a lawyer to sort through this stuff. I don't know who's legally in the right here. I just know ethically and optically, it seems like Robert Morris would be in the wrong. And who the hell is he to ask for all this money? But I don't know what the legal answer is going to be. But yeah, you would think there's some sort of clause that says if you do something crazy, we're not going to give you the benefits. So now it's even more clear. He was in it for the money, not for the ministry. Sure seems like it. I mean, he's not asking for like some golden cross to put around his neck. He's not asking them to give him a chance to preach every Christmas. He just wants the cash that he's going to run. I know someone pointed this out here in the comments, but like, what is his wife thinking at this point? Why does she even want this blood money at this point that he would only be getting because he had to leave the church? Why did he leave the church? Because of what he did to a little child. And his wife apparently is like, yeah, I'm good with that. Just give me the cash too. What better people to grift than those trained to trust a singular source of guidance for centuries? I think this is one of the worst things about what religion teaches people, that there are prophets or pastors or religious leaders that you could put your trust in, and they don't necessarily earn your trust. They are just granted trust by the very position that they are in. And that you should put your trust in them and you should trust them with your secrets. And you can just assume they're on the up and up. And then it doesn't matter to all these people how many stories there are of pastors behaving badly, of how many pastors get arrested. By the way, I see those stories every day of a pastor who gets arrested for doing X or Y, or who is going to jail for a long time because they were like hiding cameras in the church bathrooms or all sorts of crazy stuff. How many of those stories do you need to see before you at least accept the premise that maybe religion is not a virtue, that maybe trust has to be earned? Like, it doesn't matter what field you're in, trust can be broken, and you could trust people and they have a secret life you don't know about. That's possible. That happens everywhere. But I don't get why religious leaders get this unearned trust that they don't deserve, especially when it's not like Robert Morris slipped and fell ethically in the last 10 minutes. This happened like 40 years ago. And he just hid it from everybody that entire time. And it was only because of the courage of the survivor that we know any of this today. I mean, just to piggyback on what I just said, it's the same thing with the Republican Party too right now. Like, it is not unfair to compare the Republican Party to what is going on in a lot of these religious organizations where they just put their trust in Trump, and it doesn't matter what you show them. You could show them all the hypocrisy. You could show them that he's totally bullshitting them every time he opens his mouth, and none of them care because he's their Lord and Savior now. He can do no wrong. Just listen to what Carolyn Levitt says during her press conferences every day. They will never admit Trump said anything wrong, makes any mistakes, whatever. And how dare you question anything he says, right? If the media asks any actual questions, he attacks the media and the rest of them attack the media. It's just how the Republican Party works because they put their trust in a single individual. Meanwhile, you saw stories this week about like Biden was too old and he should have said it early. And pretty much every Democrat I know is like, yeah, we know he was old. I didn't vote for him because I love the guy. I voted for him because he wasn't Trump. Like, I hope this is what we learn from this. Like, Democratic leaders are not your saviors, and they can break your trust, and then you can get rid of them and vote for somebody else. But in the Republican Party, you go with the guy at the top of the poll. I genuinely don't know what's going to happen when Trump is gone eventually, which is because he'll be gone. No one else can just pretend to be him and just capture that magic, that spell he has cast over everyone in the party. I don't know what happens. And to that point in the comment here, would Robert Morris's wife even accept that money knowing what her husband did? Clearly, she's in on this. I haven't heard her say, I'm getting rid of my husband and it's horrible what he did. Until I read that story, I'm fully assuming she's on board with this. This is, by the way, also, while we're on the subject of politics, this is why no one should be like, oh, Melania Trump is secretly stealth. She's against him, or she doesn't really love Donald Trump. No, she's fully on board with him. Usha Vance is fully on board with what the Trump administration is doing. Do not give these people an out because you think secretly they can't possibly be on board with this unless you hear them speak out openly about what's wrong with these people. You have to assume they are all in the same camp. They are all horrible people. The backfire effect in psychology. Which thing are we talking about? Thanks for that donation. I don't know I don't know if you're talking about like the Streisand effect where this guy is trying to draw attention to the thing you should not be drawing attention to. But the bottom line is Robert Morris molested a child, got indicted for it, could go to jail for it, and now he's in the news because he wants millions and millions of dollars to fund the rest of his life. Apropos of nothing, I wonder, that we already did that one. Oops, I think I was trying to point out the hypocrisy. Universal healthcare is too expensive while they have no problem dumping millions of dollars on these BS lawsuits. Yeah, I mean, the right wing will spend a lot of money on tax cuts for the rich and these BS lawsuits, and then they'll say like, yeah, but we can't help poor people. They just gotta get on their own 2 feet. Like, yeah, if you're worried about the hypocrisy of the right, that's the feature, not the bug. Like, of course they're hypocrites on this. Of course they don't actually want to help people. They want to make life as miserable as possible for whatever groups, whatever people they don't think deserve to have a nice life. And maybe that is based on your color. Maybe that is based on what country you came from, how much money you have or you can make for them. But if they don't like your kind, they're going to do everything they can to make life miserable for you. And they will cloak that by just saying the word Jesus 8 times in a sentence. The phenomenon where attempting to correct a belief or misconception can paradoxically strengthen the belief rather than weaken it. Yeah, I don't even know what we're talking to anymore. My brain is fried. I apologize. All right, anything else here before we move on? All right, I'm going to jump ahead to the next story here. Give me 1 second to pull this up. Ah, yes. Okay. I talked earlier about Liberty University, specifically because Liberty University was fined like $14 million for not keeping students safe on campus. And it's possible, in my mind, that Liberty University is asking the Trump administration to undo that. Well, it turns out last year, there was another Christian university that also got hit with a fine. And I made a video on this. It was 2023, not 2024. I made a video about this at the time, but it's worth rehashing some of those details. So this is the headline. U.S. Department of Education, Office of Federal Student Aid fines Grand Canyon University, which is a private Christian school, $37.7 million for deceiving thousands of students. And just look at what it said here in the first couple paragraphs. GCU, which dispersed the most federal student aid of all participating institutions for the past 4 years, they were hit with this fine. Why? Because an FSA investigation found that GCU lied to more than 7,500 former and current students about the cost of its doctoral programs over several years. GCU falsely advertised a lower cost than what 98% of students ended up paying to complete certain programs. GCU lied about the cost of its doctoral programs to attract students to enroll. ... FSA takes its oversight responsibility seriously. GCU's lies harmed students, broke their trust, and led to unexpectedly high levels of student debt. Today, we're holding them accountable. ... So why were they fined? Not because they were Christian. Clearly, it's because, according to the government, they advertise that if you want to get your doctorate from our school, you have to take this many classes, pay this much money, roughly. But in reality, you had to pay way more than they actually said. We actually have evidence of this from the information that was sent by the government to GCU. And I want to show you this chart right here, if I can pull it up. This is an example of what they are talking about. Here we go. Look at this. This is from what the government sent GCU from their investigation. And this is just one example from about 2,000 graduates between 2011 and 2017. They said, you have to take X number of classes to get your PhD. But GCU is making these students take extra continuation courses that made them have to stay on campus longer and pay more money. Look at this. Look at the left side of the chart here. How many continuation courses did you have to take? Look at the very bottom of the list. What percentage of graduates had to take 6 or more extra courses? And it says, what percentage of graduates had to do that? 34.8% of students had to take more than 6 extra courses. It took them 72 more weeks to finish their degree, and it cost them over $12,000. How many students had to take 5 additional classes? 42.9%. It took them 60 weeks. It cost them $10,000. So this goes on. How many students did not have to take any extra classes in order to get their PhD? 1.7%. It's at the very top of that chart. Only 1.7% of the students had to take 0 extra classes. But everyone else had to take more classes and had to pay, in some cases, more than $10,000 more than anticipated. So this is what the government said. We know you're doing this. We have evidence you are doing this. And not only that, the government said you have the tuition cost on your website. You're lowballing it. That's a fake number. They said your enrollment agreement that students have to sign has that lowballed number. You have a calculator on your website so students can get a rough estimate of how much it would cost to go to your school. That uses the lowball numbers. So it's not like they made a mistake on one part of their website. This was all over the place. And they are gouging students out of this money. Here's another example of what they did. This is a page that used to be on their website. I will show you this right here. This is if you want to get a Doctor of Philosophy and General Psychology. And you could look on the side of this page here. How many credits would you need to get? 60. It'll take you about 8 weeks online. You could transfer up to 9 credits. It'll cost you $725 per credit. And by the way, you also have to do your dissertation and whatever else on top of this. But they're saying if you do the math there, it would cost you about $43,000 to get your degree from that school. What they don't tell you on that page is what extra classes, continuation courses you got to take. So like, if you knew that, then maybe you would decide not to go to their school. And the Department of Education wrote, and this is kind of damning, according to the internal emails at your school, I don't know if I can pull this up, but they said internal emails indicate that GCU leadership has been aware since at least January of 2017 that its disclosures regarding cost were incomplete or misleading. So the leadership at this school knew for years they were lying to students about the actual costs of their degrees if they're getting these doctorates, right? And so they said, GCU's argument is we didn't lie about this. You could totally read about the actual costs in the fine print and other documents. And the government's like, no, you cannot pawn this off on read the fine print. It should be front and center. And so they said, we are making you pay a fine of $37.7 million. And they said GCU has to stop lying about the cost of its doctoral degrees. And they have to hire a monitor to make sure that the school is complying with the law, right? And the reason they were allowed to do all this, like how can the government go after a Christian school for lying? I mean, they lie about a lot of things. But the reason they could do it is because GCU uses federal funds. They get over $1.1 billion in Title IV funding, which is federal financial aid. So the Department of Education has every right to make sure those funds are being used as intended. And if students are taking out loans to go to GCU, but then they're having to pay way more than they anticipated, that's leaving students worse off because they might be in debt because they did not calculate for those additional costs. That means they will have to take out more loans. It's not a good use of their money because they couldn't plan for that. According to the report from the Department of Education, more than $18 million in federal funds had been given to 1,344 students in their doctoral programs just in the past year. And over 7,500 students had gone through that program since 2018, and they had to pay over $122 million in tuition. And so the fact that this school was only being fined $37.7 million, based on what the government could have fined them, it could have been over $500 million. They could have fined the school $509 million. Instead, they went with $37.7 million. And that's the last we heard of the school saying the school owes this fine. Now, GCU responded to all this by saying, how dare you come after us? This is from October of 2023. GCU categorically refutes the Department of Education's lies and deceptive statements. This is after the Department of Education announced the fine. GCU categorically denies every accusation, every one of them, in the Department of Education statement. Further evidence of the coordinated and unjust actions. They're accusing the government of coordinated and unjust actions the federal government is taking against the largest Christian university in the country. Their response was, you're coming after us because we're Christian. It's like, no, did you read their report? They're going after you because you don't know how numbers work. And you're lying about the numbers. But GCU is like, you're persecuting us. Why would you do this? Like, there was nothing anti-Christian taking place. But anyway, since that time, since October of 2023, the school has appealed the fine while insisting they did nothing wrong. They actually said, well, a state-run agency did an audit and they're still working with us, as if that counters anything they did. The audit had nothing to do with the doctoral programs. And the president of the school kept saying there are no student complaints about the fees, which is also not true because it turns out students have since filed a class action lawsuit against the school saying they were victims of the price gouging. And that lawsuit is still ongoing. So all they had to do, All GCU had to do this whole time to fix this whole problem, hear me out here, is tell the truth. Just tell students how much it costs to get a doctoral degree from your school. That's it. Put that on your website. Don't hide it in the fine print. Don't exclude it from some charts. Like, don't act like Ticketmaster with hidden fees. Just tell everybody up front how much it costs for the average student to finish your degree. And again, going back to that chart I showed you at the very beginning, if 98% of students are paying more money for those continuing courses than you are saying it costs to get this degree, you are not telling people the correct amount of money it'll cost. Seems pretty obvious. But GCU did not want to do that. They just want to lie to everybody, and they feel like hiding behind a shield of Christianity is going to protect them from any further scrutiny. And why am I saying all this now? Because it turns out that was a good bet on their part, unfortunately. Last week, Grand Canyon University posted something on their website, and let me show you what it says. Here's the headline. U.S. Department of Education rescinds record fine with prejudice, meaning they can't come after us again against GCU. Look at this. In a joint stipulation of dismissal order issued by the Education Department's Office of Hearings and Appeals, the Education Department, this is the one now run by Linda McMahon, the wrestling lady, they dismissed the case with no findings, fines, liabilities, or penalties of any kind. The Education Department confirmed it has not established that GCU violated any Title IV requirements, including the claim that we substantially misrepresented the cost of its doctoral programs, ... The dismissal stated unequivocally that there are no findings against GCU or any of its people, and no fine is imposed. And the president of GCU says the fine dismissal is welcome news, but he's not surprised. The facts clearly support our contention that we were wrongly accused of misleading our doctoral students, and we appreciate the recognition that those accusations were without merit. So yeah, I mean, the bottom line here is the Trump administration said, yeah, we saw the work that the Biden administration did to lay out the case for why they're coming after you, and we're just going to throw that in the garbage because that's how Republicans work. That's it. We don't care if you're screwing over students. Mind you, the Department of Education now is not saying GCU did not do anything wrong. They're just saying, we're just erasing history and pretending like we never investigated you in the first place. So the Education Department says, we have not established you did anything wrong. They're not saying we investigated it and found that you didn't do anything wrong, because it turns out the facts were incorrect or anything. No. They're not doing anything like that. They're just saying, yeah, that was a Biden thing, but we're Trump administration people. We're Republicans. So if your Christian school wants to fuck over students, we're cool with that because that's what Jesus wanted us to do. So they just rescinded the fine. And now the president of the school is pretending that he is absolved from doing anything wrong. That's not what the Department of Education said, but it's just more Christian grifting. Like, they don't care about this. So here's the thing. Legally, this means the school does not have to pay the fine. That doesn't necessarily mean they did nothing wrong. It just means the Republican government is looking the other way. Shouldn't surprise anybody that the Trump administration does not care about schools that screw students out of money. That's how Trump University worked. So just because no punishments will be levied by the Education Department does not undo the basic math of how much the courses cost compared to how much the school said they cost. And the school is pretending it never did anything wrong. But like, all this means is conservative Christians are considered above the law in this administration. That's the takeaway here. You can screw over students all you want, and as long as you're a Christian school, Republicans will look the other way. But like, if you're an Ivy League school, because Ivy Leagues represent smarter students, and in Republicans' mind, that's the elite, even though like half the Republican Congress people went to those schools. But they're like, we'll come after you because we just don't like what you're teaching or what you're allowing on your campus. And by the way, I'm not even just saying that out of nowhere, because as I said in a story from earlier when Pam Bondi held her meeting for the Trump administration's anti-Christian bias task force. One of the groups that spoke, or one of the people who spoke, was that representative from Liberty University. And check this out from a story about that meeting. Was it last month? I think it was last month. Liberty University Provost Scott Hicks spoke against record high education department fines issued against the two biggest Christian colleges in the country, Liberty and Grand Canyon University. Remember, why was Liberty fined? Because students were not safe on campus because Liberty wasn't following the law. Why is Grand Canyon University fined? Because they were lying to students about how much it cost to get a degree on their campus. And according to this guy speaking at the anti-Christian bias meeting, neither case directly involved the school's Christian convictions, but each one of them maintained it received unfair treatment from the Biden administration, which is just plain bullshit. Biden's administration did not go after them because they were Christian. They went after them because they were receiving federal funds and making students less safe and less secure with their money. That's why the Biden administration went after them, because they had a job to do, and that's how you do that job. And these Christians are like, you went after us because we love Jesus. And in the case of Grand Canyon University, as I just showed you, that fine has been taken away. And as I mentioned with Liberty University, their fine, because they wouldn't keep students safe from sexual predators on campus, that has not been rescinded, but not yet. Like, maybe it will be very soon. I expect that to happen very soon. It's just utterly infuriating how horrible all these people are. I will say, I just want to reiterate one other thing, which is that a couple of students filed a class action lawsuit against Grand Canyon University for screwing them out of their tuition money over this exact situation. And that case is still ongoing. Like, that is not, we haven't heard a ruling on that yet. I will say, the school tried to get that kicked out of court. They tried to get a judge to dismiss the case. And the judge said, no, this lawsuit can definitely continue. That's where we're at right now. So we'll see what the courts say. Because if students say you screwed us out of money, that a judge could say, yeah, you were screwed out of money and Grand Canyon University owes you for that. While the education department under Trump now can totally say, yeah, we know what you did, but we don't care anymore, so we're going to take away our fine. Those are two separate things. We will see if the court case ends up getting GCU in trouble, even if the Republican administration is choosing to look the other way. So infuriating. All right, what questions do we have here? Thanks for that. I wanted to bring this up. This is from Dan. GCU on many occasions has been implicated in intentionally draining veterans' GI funds with bad degree requirements that fail to deliver any results. It's basically stealing from the taxpayer. I don't know that. I'm taking your word on that. But based on what I'm learning about them with what they did with these doctoral students, it wouldn't surprise me if they tried to screw over other students, including GIs, the same way. I mean, it's despicable behavior. I don't know why Republicans don't care about this stuff. They should. I mean, that's the thing I keep hearing from the Christian right, which is, this is what they say to each other. If it's Christian, it ought to be better. And in every single case, it seems, anytime someone says something is Christian, it is so much worse than the secular alternatives, right? Like, Christian movies suck. Christian musicals, they exist. Like church musicals, they suck. Christian schools suck compared to secular alternatives. And they keep pretending like they're being persecuted when they're actually just bad at what they do. They make a mockery of our already very troubled education system here in the United States. Yeah, I mean, it makes it harder for people to get an education when schools that purport to be ethical because they are Christian are the very ones screwing them out of their education. Because you have to imagine there are some people that calculated, okay, I can spend $40,000 to try to get my PhD in something. And then it turns out it's actually $60,000. And they don't have that money. And they can't go into that much debt about it. And then what do? Now it's too late. They either got to finish the degree or they're stuck with a lot of debt and nothing to show for it. And again, who doesn't care about this? Apparently Christians. To be fair, I bet the GOP would support a grift like GCU even if it wasn't a Christian school. Yeah, I mean, all you need is one of those schools to just buy one of Trump's stupid meme coins, and they would probably look the other way for that too. I think as I'm making this live stream right now, Trump is meeting with the people who bought his stupid meme coin because they'll do anything for the people who give him money personally. You can bribe him. That is the moral lesson of this administration. Bribe Trump all you want. Republicans do not care because they have no ethics as a party. And their voters don't care either. Trump just loves the grift Christians have. I hope that when history looks back on this time with the three historians we will have left, one of the takeaways is that Trump realized that like the Righteous Gemstones should be a documentary, and that's the business he wanted to go into, just duping the most gullible people in the country. And he probably couldn't do it as a church pastor, so he did it as the head of the Republican Party and found it to be way easier. And he used them the way pastors use their flock, and he just took their money. And then he ran with it because he's not doing anything in return for the bribes. He's just taking the money and then running with it. And by the time he's no longer president, like whatever, either his kids continue the family grift or whatever, he's gone. It won't matter anymore. It's a con system at GCU. Study a school before you go. Is this the only school like this? I mean, to answer the first part of that, yes, you should study the school before you go. I do wonder how many of these, this is a question I have with all these Christian schools. There are some students who attend fundamentalist Christian schools like Liberty, Harding, Patrick Henry College. Like, why do they go to these schools where the diploma is worth like toilet paper? A couple reasons. One is they have connections to the sort of jobs you want. Some of those schools are very plugged in to like right-wing politicians. So if you want to work in politics, they can get you an internship there. Some of these schools brag about that. Another reason you might go to the schools though, and I'm not talking like Brigham Young University where you're brought up thinking this is the school I have to go to because I'm Mormon. But sometimes parents say, I will pay for college, but only if you go to a Christian school. And if you're a high school student trying to get an education, it might make sense to go to a Christian school and get your degree than take out student loans and go to a public university, even if you might be better served that way. I mean, I get why they might go to that school. But if you're just going there because you think, oh, hey, this school, I don't care that it's Christian. I'm going because they offer this degree, and you're not really doing the research you need. Unfortunately, no one's looking out for you at that point. The school wants your money. The government under Republican leadership isn't looking out for you. And then what do? I mean, other countries will have affordable education, higher education. We don't. And that means, yeah, it's prime ground to take advantage of people. All right, I'm going to jump to, I have another quick story, but this one bugged me. I'm going to post about this soon, but I haven't posted an article yet. Let me pull this up here. A couple more things, and I think I'm done. All right, we're going to talk about Texas really quick because I've done a lot of stories about the rise of Christian nationalism and what that means when it comes to shoving Christianity into public schools. And sometimes that means using the Bible in history classes. That's what they're doing in Oklahoma right now. Sometimes that's putting the 10 Commandments up in every classroom. Louisiana passed a law to do that. A judge shut it down, but plenty of states are trying it. Making religious invocations part of school board meetings. We talked about that a couple weeks ago. Allowing students to skip class so they can get religious indoctrination off campus. Ohio has been a leader in that. And other schools are doing that with LifeWise. And I even did a story a couple weeks ago about a Mormon seminary that was built on the campus of a public school until the outcry got so loud that they decided not to go through with that. So some of those are more insidious than others. Some of those have been shot down by judges, but the hits keep coming. The point is, right now, with Republican judges, Republican Supreme Court, Republican lawmakers with trifectas in a lot of states, you can do a lot of damage, and you could do a lot toward trying to shove your religion into the law and make Christianity the default. And this is one I had not seen until now. There is a law that was just passed by the Texas State Senate. There was a bill passed by the Texas State Senate It passed on a 22-9 vote, and it's now in the state house. But I want to show you this bill. Check this out right here. It's one page, pretty much. Yeah, it's just one page. Senate Bill 2617, and I'm going to go to the underlined part because that's the only part that matters. Expression of dates. The Board of Trustees of a school district or the governing body of an open enrollment charter school shall, that means they have to, adopt and implement a policy requiring the use of Anno Domini AD and before Christ BC when expressing dates during student instruction. This bill would force schools to use BC, before Christ, when talking about like the ancient Egyptians or what happened a few thousand years ago. You have to use before Christ or else. And then look at B. A school district or any of these charter schools may not purchase or select curriculum materials for the district's or school's curriculum if those materials have dates that say Common Era and before Common Era, CE or BCE, which is what historians use and academics use. So if you have any textbook that says, in 300 BCE, something happened, Socrates did this, you can't even purchase the textbook anymore. They are forcing you to use before Christ as a default setting for what happened before the year 1. And then you got to use AD. Now, why do they use, I know for some people, they're going to hear this and say, what's the big deal? I use BC, I use AD all the time. And you know what? I do too. If I saw that in a story, I honestly wouldn't think twice about it. But the reason historians and academics use CE, Common Era, and BCE, before Common Era, is basically because they know, hey, the entire world doesn't base its calendar on the supposed birth of Christ. So even though everyone kind of says, oh, it's the year 2025, well, what is that 2025 years after, right? So it's, instead of changing the whole calendar, let's just change the way we frame it. It's Common Era, before Common Era. It's inclusive of all people. It's not a pro-Christian thing. It's just a neutral way of saying dates. It's pretty harmless. And Texas is like, how dare you try to be neutral when we here in Texas are a Christian state? So it's petty. It's a stupid bill. And also, again, it's one thing to just say you got to use AD and BC. But the second clause there where they're like, you can't buy textbooks or materials that say otherwise. I pulled up a summary of the advanced placement curriculum. And they're considering offering an AP World History Ancient. They already offer an advanced placement course called World History Modern World History. That's like from 1200 onward, 1200 CE onward. But they're considering offering a class on ancient world history. But I just want to show you like this first paragraph here. If they get enough support for this course, they would be committing to offering a new AP World History class from ancient, World History Ancient, from about 8000 BCE to the year 1450 CE, in addition to AP World History Modern, which is from 1200 CE to present. And the only reason I bring this up is the advanced placement curriculum, which those are classes students can take if they want to get college credit in high school and maybe not have to pay that much for tuition when they're in college. Those classes use BCE and CE. And the question that I haven't found an answer to is, if they pass this bill in Texas, does that mean they can't buy any textbooks that would be used for the AP curriculum? Or would Texas demand that the publishers who write those AP textbooks make a special Texas dumbass version that only uses the Christian labeling instead, or else we're not going to do it? I haven't heard that answer yet. I also have not heard from any of these politicians, what's the penalty if a teacher uses CE and BCE, even if this becomes a law? Because there's no penalty mentioned in that really quick bill. So they haven't really thought this through. They're just trying to shove Christianity anywhere they can, and they decided this was a way to do it. Because apparently they believe the birth of Christ is the default setting for human history everywhere in the world. And the bill's sponsor, it's this dude right here. Brandon Creighton is the Texas senator who's sponsoring this bill. When he was asked about this, I want to show you what he said to people. He acted like BCE and CE was a liberal conspiracy. By putting this into law, the Senate bill protects Texas's long-standing approach to teaching history clearly, consistently, and without political distortion, giving parents, teachers, and students confidence in a consistent foundation for learning. Apparently, using CE and BCE is political distortion, but using before Christ, no, that's neutral. Everyone's good with that. These are the same people who are like, Christmas has to be a national holiday, and if you dare say happy holidays, that is liberal bias. Merry Christmas is the default for everybody. Got that, Jews? Got that, Muslims? But if you say happy holidays, that is some sort of democratic George Soros conspiracy or something. So this idiot is like, yeah, if you use CE and BCE, it's political distortion, but we got to use BC because, Jesus. Everyone loves Jesus, right? That's seriously his argument for why he wants this bill. I've said this before, but this just shows you that conservative Christians always treat neutrality as oppression. This is a perfect example. When it comes to religion, neutrality is oppression for them. A secular demarcation of history is apparently distortion, while a Bible-based one is teaching history clearly. I don't know. By the way, I was a little surprised to see this, that a few years ago, the Texas State Board of Education actually considered going away from BC and AD and just encouraging people to use CE and BCE. But that Board of Education ultimately did not adopt the policy, which members considered among broader revisions to the social studies standards. They decided to push that discussion to this year. But if this bill passes, then that discussion becomes moot. Because if the law says you got to use BC and AD, you don't even get the option of using CE and BCE. But by the way, they considered that a few years ago. The Texas State Board of Education, which has always been conservative and famously made news for trying to shove creationism into science textbooks, they're more conservative today than they were 3 years ago. So there's no way they were even going to do that. But I guess this lawmaker's like, oh shit, they're going to discuss this soon. Might as well pass a law to force Jesus upon everybody instead. Like, I don't know. What problem was BCE causing these people? I have no idea. Who was taking a history class? I thought that if Christians were taking a history class, they would be more offended by the very sentence something happened in like 6,000 BCE. Because they're like, what? 6,000 BCE? That didn't exist. Time in the Bible started at like 4,000 BC. That's what Ken Ham told me. I would have thought the fact that they even acknowledged there was a time before Christ would be way more offensive than the designation they use, but what do I know? So anyway, these lawmakers think the word BCE or the abbreviation BCE is erasing their religious history because they're constantly surrounded by persecution in a state entirely dominated by conservative Christians. In case you're wondering, Brandon Creighton, the sponsor of this bill, he has defended Confederate monuments. He opposes LGBTQ rights. He wants to make it harder for women to access health care. He also backed a voucher program that will take taxpayer dollars out of public schools and send them to private religious schools instead. So this guy's not a fan of public education, period. And now he figured out a new way to make everything even worse. So anyway, as I said, this passed the state Senate. It is now sitting in the State House Committee on Public Education. And I know I am as surprised as you that the Texas State House has a committee on public education. But the only silver lining maybe is that there are only 2 weeks left in the legislative session. And I assume that in Texas, they are really interested in making sure they can hurt as many people as possible. And the body count for a bill like this isn't very high. So it's like, what should we go after? Poor people who need health care? They would rather take health care away from those people and take money out of the public school system. That is a priority for them more so than trying to take away BCE from history students reading a book. So maybe they don't get around to this. But if they do, you can fully expect Republicans will get on board with this and Greg Abbott will sign it. Just a horrible idea and a dumb idea, but just another way they're trying to do Christian nationalism in public schools around the country. All right, I will stop there with this story. What questions we have here? For fuck's sake, the Texas legislature needs to get a hobby. This stuff is a total waste of taxpayer money. This is their hobby. Their hobby is shoving Jesus into the law and hurting as many people as humanly possible. That is what they get off on. That is what brings the smiles to their faces. It's just, how much damage can we do? We're the Republican Party. And it's just a arms race to see which lawmaker can do more to hurt the groups they don't feel deserve anything. That's how the Republican Party works. And Texas is just run by Republicans. So this is the game they keep playing. Unless people stop voting for these idiots, it's going to keep happening. Jewish people use CE and BCE to avoid blaspheming by validating Jesus as God. That is a very interesting point, that even mentioning God is something you don't do if you're Jewish, like writing that name on paper or anything like that. But yeah, this would be especially problematic for people who are Jewish or Hindu or atheist and who don't acknowledge that Jesus was special in any way, even if they grant that Jesus was alive. I don't know. They don't care, though. They don't care about Jewish people. They're Republicans. They care about Israel. They don't care about Jewish people. Let's change it to PC post-COVID. It is now year 5. Oh, man. I mean, listen, I demarcate my life that way in many ways, but also in a lot of ways, it's not year 5. We are still in COVID. We're still feeling the effects of COVID because of the way policies are going in a lot of ways. But I like that idea. Are they trying to dumb down the next generation? Yeah, man, the Republican Party needs their base. They're trying to make them not have to go to college because those colleges are like, we can't take a kid from Texas. They don't know enough. This would fuck up Texas students' chances of getting into college even more than the public schools already do. I mean, I will say, I don't think this would hurt them as much as, say, Oklahoma putting fake history in their social studies standards, or like some states that are like, let's not teach evolution correctly. Let's teach intelligent design. Yeah, then colleges may have a legit reason not to accept those students in those degree programs because you don't have the baseline knowledge you need. This one is just stupid. This is just like, what's going to happen when these kids read a book or go to college and they come across CE and BCE? Like, what's going to go through their minds? Like, what is this blasphemy? Oh my God, common era. What does that even mean? Like, they'll figure it out. It's just a petty thing to do. I don't even know if this is going to lead to a lawsuit or anything, maybe from Jewish people or something, but like, it's dumb. It just sounds like a sneaky way to kill advanced placement classes in high school, another assault on education through religiosity. Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine. I think parents would be in an uproar if they basically got rid of those AP history classes because of this. But I assume, and I hope the College Board doesn't do this, but they would probably just cave in and just say, fine, we'll send you special Texas dumbass textbooks that say BC and AD. But also our test that we give to everyone in the nation is going to have CE and BCE, so get used to it. Kids will figure that out, but like, again, stupid, just stupid. All right. Oh, thank you, Dan, for gifting 10 memberships to Friendly Atheist. Thank you so much for doing that. I appreciate it. That's wonderful. What else we got here? And I got one last story for you. This should be a quick one, but I saw this and I was disturbed by it. This may be really short, but I had to show you this clip. If you were trying to accuse like a Christian business owner of doing something shady, and mind you, they run a secular business. Let's say you're the Christian owner of a fast food restaurant or anything like that. Is it okay to discriminate in hiring? Obviously, the answer is no. You can't discriminate in hiring. There are laws. that say you can't discriminate on the basis of religion when hiring people, or on the basis of color, or on the basis of gender, and things like that. And those are all good, sensible laws. I want to show you a clip of a guy named Joel Webbin, who is a right-wing preacher, who basically said, listen, if you're a good Christian, you should totally discriminate in hiring. Let me play you this clip, and we'll talk about it after that. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
So well, that doesn't sound Christian. That's not Christ-like. What do you mean crush your enemies? I mean crushing your enemies through righteous avenues. Crushing your enemies does not mean crawling into, their window in the middle of the night and unaliving them. That's not what I'm talking about. Save that for Democrats. They do those kinds of things. They're right. They're the ones who try to assassinate, a guy on a presidential campaign. We don't do that here, right? We don't do that. We are law-abiding citizens. But through law-abiding mechanisms, if I own a business, I can, with each employee, I can say, well, is he a Christian?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he's not. I'm not going to hire him.
Right.
It's like, well, there are certain laws against that. Okay, well, keep your business
didn't
small.
fit the
then.
qualifications.
Yeah, he didn't fit. Yeah, you can be shrewd.
I
That's
have a more
right.
qualified candidate.
You can be shrewd. You don't have to say the quiet part out loud. I'll say it for you, right? That's our ministry here, right? We say the quiet part out loud so that you can stay employed and be shrewd. But in a spirit of shrewdness, with how you spend your money, with who you hire, with how you cast your vote, with all these things, you can be leveraging your decisions on a daily basis in such a way that it is a blessing to God's people and it is a detriment to those who hate him.
There's so much wrong with that clip. I'm gonna start with that first part first. First of all, the guy who tried to shoot Trump was a registered Republican, so I don't even know what the hell that guy is talking about. At that point, this is not something Democrats do. What the hell? But back to the point, he's basically saying, listen, you can wink, wink, only hire Christians. He calls it being shrewd. But what he's saying is it's okay to do religious discrimination if you're a Christian business owner, and you could totally have a no Jews allowed policy and a no Muslims allowed policy and a no atheists allowed policy, because that's what God wants. He's saying, and he even admitted this, he's saying it out loud because he knows you can't say it out loud. So he's doing it for you and giving you permission to do the religious discrimination at your workplace, even though it's against the law. You just got to find a reason to hire certain people and not others. And you just got to make up another reason to hire the Christian and not hire the non-Christian. And you can make up whatever reason you want. And I think that's important for you to see, because one, this is what these guys talk about when they think they're talking to a Christian audience, right? Like if you heard a Muslim or an atheist say, if you own a business, you should only hire your people, conservative Christians would be flipping out and calling it some conspiracy and demanding the police come after you because you violated the law or something. But when they do it, he's saying, it's okay. It's what God wants. I just find that both telling, because they're totally willing to say this to each other. It's not like that dude's co-hosts called him out on it, because they fully agree with it. And again, if you look up that guy, Joel Webbin, the guy who said that, he has a habit of being like one of those conservative Christian shock jocks that just says whatever comes to his mind that is always patriarchal, misogynistic, and deeply religiously discriminatory. Also, I don't understand the logic, though, of only hiring Christians, because if you are running a business, I would assume, I say this not as a business owner, wouldn't you want to hire the best people for the job? And if the best people for the job are not Christians for that particular job, it's just, hey, we found this person happens to be good at the job. Who cares what their religion is? Wouldn't you want to hire that person for your business? Because that's good for your Why would you want to have a shittier business by limiting yourself to people who share your religious views? I don't understand it. We are not talking about a church where I get that, where that makes sense, where you want people because this is the one thing we do. But when you're running like a Burger King, just hire good employees. It shouldn't matter what their background is, what their sexual orientation, what their religious background is. It doesn't matter. Can they do the job? Should be all that matters. I don't know. Am I the weird one for thinking that? Apparently, because I'm not like this guy where I say only hire other atheists for the job. But mind you, he is not alone. He is not some fringe person saying this, because if you go to some mega churches in some cities, they literally have like yellow pages, some sort of directory of Christian-owned businesses in the community. And like, I'm not saying there's anything illegal about that, but they are saying, like, wink, wink, you should only spend your money at these businesses. These are our people, not because they're good at what they do necessarily, but because they're Christian as well. Which, again, what's the implication there? That if you're a Jewish-owned business or a Muslim-owned business or a Hindu-owned business, you're not worth going to. You're not worth giving your money to, even though we live in a society that is pluralistic. It's just a disgusting mindset. Even if in certain cases here, what they're doing is not discriminatory, it's just trying to, boost up your own people, your own church, your own community. What that guy is encouraging, though, is religious discrimination. That is illegal if anyone actually tried to do it. But again, they're conservative Christian. They think the law doesn't apply to them. And I just found that disturbing, and I wanted to share that with all of you. That's it. What questions do we have for that one? And then I'll toss it over to Den. We follow the law, but also let me tell you how not to follow the law. Yeah, a lot of conservative Christian podcasts are very much like wink, wink, the laws don't matter. I mean, that same group of Theo bros, they will routinely tweet out things like, in a good country, women would not be able to vote and families would only get one vote and the dad would cast that vote. Like, they say all these things that are just, it's one thing to do it in your family, whatever, but also they think society is better when people like them, white, married men with no physical disabilities, who have some sort of education and that they can have a job, one job that pays for everything in the whole family and they don't need two incomes. Like, they assume every family is just like that and just like them, and that's the only acceptable type of family. And they revolve their whole world around those are the only people that deserve benefits. I think, was it last year that Texas tried to pass a tax break for like families that have 10 kids because they knew damn well that that only really applies to fundamentalist Christians? Like, ugh. Only hire the people Christians won't hire, right? Like, that's just good advice at that point. That's the weird thing. If I owned a business, I won't care if someone's Christian. Can you do the job I'm asking you to do? Then great, here's your paycheck. I am stunned by this idea that we should only hire other Christians, even though, as I said, I've seen this happen. True story. There is a right-wing anti-abortion activist, Janet Porter, and a couple years ago, she decided to make a sitcom, like a actual sitcom with a laugh track, and it's on her YouTube page. Like, episode 1 is on there. And I think she actually hired professional actors to do the other roles. She cast herself in the lead role. She can't act, but she hired professional actors to do the other stuff. And she wrote the script. And it's so bad because when you assume you got to get a Christian message in the show and you got to put yourself, who can't act, as the Christian moral center of the universe, of course, the end product's not going to be good. And I only bring that up because, like, if you're running a business and you only hire other Christians, you're not necessarily getting the best of the best. You're getting the best of a select subset. And that may not be good for your company. And I would think if you're running a Christian business or you're a Christian business owner running a business, it's better for your faith if your business is good. Not that you're hiring shitty people because they all happen to be Christian. Like, wouldn't it be better for your religion if your business is good because you hire the best people? I don't know. Is that just me? I don't get it. It's Christian DEI. Thank you for that donation. It's Christian DEI, the way Republican, what does that say? Republicans lickens? I like it. CDEI. Yeah, I mean, it's very much if Black people get hired in a position of government power, like a 4-star general running the Department of Defense or something, that guy clearly didn't earn his position. That must be a DEI hire. But like Pete Hegseth earned it on merit. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's all DEI to people who don't deserve it because the meritocracy does not favor religious conservatives by and large. It was Republicans who shot Trump. I mean, yeah, the kid who tried to do that was a registered Republican. And also, even if he wasn't, as it's not like Democrats are actively promoting that stuff. Democrats are the ones that don't want guns everywhere. Like, they're not the ones causing violence. Can I not hire a Trump supporter because it shows a fundamental lack of economics literacy? Well, see, right there, you're being shrewd. So I guess it's okay. Like, again, if they don't know what they're doing, you don't have to hire them. But if they are good at what they do, then their religious, political beliefs, whatever, keep it private, do your job when you're on the clock. That's all you ask for when you're running a business. All right. Den, it's all yours. What are we doing for last call? These are tweets I probably made and have forgotten about by now. I'm going to move myself to this corner here. All right, Den, it's all yours. What do we got here? Thank you. I just reached 150,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel. So if you're watching this right now, thank you. You should make everyone you know subscribe because I demand it. And yeah, it's a cool little milestone. I don't get a little plaque for that one from YouTube, but still very cool nonetheless. And I don't know, Dillahunty, I'm coming for you next. All right, this is from one of those Theo bros. This is not Joel Webbin, but this is one of his like ideological buddies, Dale Partridge, a pastor, who says, very seriously, mind you, this is not a joke from him. This is not a Poe. This is an actual dude. Feminism and gayism self-destructs. They were historically minorities for a reason. They are not pleasant lifestyles. They lead to a life of frustration, anger, and loneliness. If you want true peace and joy, they can only be found in Christ. The thing that makes me laugh, besides the word gayism, which is just funny, this idea that like he seems to think that everyone who's gay and feminist is just constantly frustrated and angry and lonely. And like, let's grant for a second, there are a lot of angry gay people and a lot of angry feminists, including men who are feminists too. But why are they angry? It's because of dudes like this. There are good reasons to be mad and frustrated right now. This idea that like I've seen so many statistics that, I don't know, atheists are not as happy as religious people are or something like that. It's like, yeah, because we have to be surrounded by you people. It's not a happy time. If you lift people up in general, you're going to be okay. But this guy's like, man, those feminists and gayists are so unhappy. It's why they self-destruct. They're frustrated and angry. And it's like, yeah, dude, it's because of you. I mean, I'm sure he would take pride in that. But also, like, it's not because they're feminists that they're angry. It's because they're well aware and they have eyes and ears and they see what you people are doing. Unbelievable. What else we got here? So this happened in my neck of the woods. I live in a western suburb of Chicago, and not in the school district that is in my community, but the neighboring one. I guess there was some kerfuffle because a trans athlete ran a race at a middle school and won some sort of track meet. And do you know what the prize for winning a middle school track meet is? I don't know. No one knows because it doesn't matter. But a lot of conservative Christians got so mad that a trans athlete was allowed to run in the race. A middle school athlete was allowed to run in the race that they got like libs of TikTok to post about it. Fox News did a segment on it. This is the most pressing thing in their life right now. But I just want to show you this one picture because the lady at the podium is one of those right-wing hate mongers who goes around and her entire life is based on making other people miserable, including LGBTQ people. And she's at the podium basically giving her sermon about why trans people shouldn't exist and shouldn't have rights. But I just want you to look behind her at this school board meeting. Look at all those flags in support of trans rights from the community, because she is outnumbered. And as far as I know, the school board is fine. They're not making any changes on behalf of what the hate mongers are doing. And those hate mongers are allowed to use the public comment section of the school board meeting to say whatever they want. But I'm so heartened by the fact that those people are in the background. They know she's a hate monger. They're waving their flags behind her. And I don't know, look, even the sign, I think you could see the sign right there on the bottom right of that image. The future is inclusive. And there's a trans flag next to that too. Like, the good guys are out there. We outnumber the bigots. The bigots are loud and they have the power of propaganda behind them. And they have entire news outlets, not news outlets. They have entire media outlets that will amplify their message. But there are more of us than them. I just think that's worth pointing out. This is very exciting. This was very cool. So there's a secular therapy project. Let's say you need therapy. And for a lot of atheists, a lot of things that they might feel a shame they feel about themselves, a lot of the fear they may have grown up with, oftentimes it stems from their religious conservative upbringing. And so if you're trying to talk out reasons you have these feelings and you're trying to overcome them and you want to talk to a therapist about it, if that therapist isn't well versed in overcoming religious trauma, they really can't help you the way you need to be helped. Well, it turns out there's a website, seculartherapy.org, that compiles a list of trained therapists that are saying, hey, I actually know how to deal with patients who have escaped religious trauma, and I know how to talk to them. And we are experts and we have the credentials and they have been vetted that they have credentials. And not only does that site exist, and that's an awesome thing, it's not free. I mean, these are regular therapists. You work with them as you would any other person, but they are specifically trained and they're saying, I know how to deal with religious trauma in case that's what you need to talk about. They just announced this week that they brought on their 1,000th vetted, therapist to the project. So if you go on their website, you could search by location if you want an in-person meeting, and you can reach out to them. But it's a fantastic project, and that's a huge milestone for them as well. And I hope that keeps getting bigger. And I hope people know about it too, right? Because that's a wonderful resource for people who need it. So I posted that Joel Webbin clip, and I played it for all of you, where he says you should only hire other Christians. And one of his co-hosts in that clip, I think the dude sitting on the left, on that far side of the screen, he responded to my tweet with that comment, "You are Indian." Which, one, yeah. Two, what? Why? Why are we doing that? Who cares? I'm not sure how that is a response to what I said. But there were plenty of responses that were also like, oh, well, he's Hindu, so blah, blah, blah. I'm like, never was, and also not even close, and you didn't bother reading my bio, did you? Yeah, I mean, I already know these guys are religiously discriminatory. That's that whole clip. But also, they're just plain racist. That's how they operate. These white conservative Christians are just bad people. And he's just broadcasting it like that. I don't know, man. It's weird. I don't have anything else to say about that. This is just funny. Carolyn Levitt, who is the president's spokesliar, she did a take your kid to work day or something, or had some kids in the press conference room and allowed them to ask questions. And amazingly, they were not harder hitting questions or less harder hitting questions than what you normally hear at these press conferences from like Fox News. But play the clip, Den, and this is one of the questions and what she responded.
Remember your question?
Yeah.
Okay, let's hear it.
What's the president's religion?
What's the president's religion? The president is a Christian and he believes in Jesus. Yes?
Like, let's grant that, okay, fine, the child asked a question that is irrelevant, but whatever, it's a fine question. What's the president's religion? She says he's a Christian and he believes in Jesus. I dare Trump to talk for like a minute about what that even means to him. He couldn't do it because he's not actually a Christian. He says he is. I think Christians can have him. But like, I think everyone knows he doesn't actually give a shit about any of this stuff. He's not an atheist. He just doesn't think about it. He thinks he's God. Like, he doesn't actually care about religion. I just found that answer funny because she says it like it's fact. And clearly, anyone who's followed the news and followed Trump knows that doesn't mean anything. He's a Christian who wants to deport the least of these. You know what I mean? He doesn't actually care. I joked atheism just spiked in the stock market. But like, I don't know. If you think Trump is a Christian, then maybe you should ask yourself, what does that actually mean? What does that look like in the public sphere? Because if you believe he's a Christian and you see the shit he does every day, day in and day out, taking bribes, making life miserable for everybody, which thing about that is the sort of Christianity you want to practice? Because it doesn't make him look good and it doesn't make Christianity look good. And I genuinely hope that in the future, we see a trend away from Christianity because people associate it with Trump. I think that would be good for all of us if people just moved away from both of those in the long run.
Remember your question?
Yeah.
What else we got here? This is just sad. This is a true story. A man from Denmark was studying abroad. Where was this? In Mississippi? Yeah, in high school. He studied abroad in high school, met an American person, got married, has 4 kids, another on the way. He forgot to fill out a form 10 years ago after a stillbirth, and now he's awaiting deportation because Trump has decided you're one of those illegal people who should not be here, so we're going to send you back somewhere else. I mean, you know things are serious when they're doing it to white people. But yeah, I mean, if you don't find this disturbing, and I find this story disturbing, what has this man done wrong in all of this? I don't know how you could hear this story and not be angry and frustrated by all of this. Like, who's supporting this? Which Republicans are saying, yeah, that guy's a drain on our society, let's get rid of him? I mean, this is a dude who's purposely chosen to live in Mississippi. He's doing something a lot of people wouldn't do. Give him a break. I mean, but this is what the Republican Party's doing. If you're voting for any Republican, anywhere on the ballot, this is what you're supporting. Because it's not like Republicans are speaking out about this. Yes. This is a summary of where we're at right now, because under the Trump administration, everything's above board. The Department of Justice is investigating Act Blue, which is the fundraising hub for Democratic candidates. The Federal Trade Commission is investigating Media Matters because they reported, I forgot what the reason was for Media Matters, but that's a website that tends to take a liberal slant on things. Department of Homeland Security is targeting Harvard because they have international students at their school. The executive office is going after democratically allied law firms because they say they're doing something un-American. A U.S. attorney, Alina Habba, charged a Democratic lawmaker who was doing her job with a crime, and the FBI arrested a liberal judge who wasn't trying to thwart the law in Wisconsin. And these people have always said, you know, the government's out to get us. And now that they're in charge, what are they doing? They're just using the power of the government to go after their enemies. Because again, the Republican policy, the one shared policy among Republicans is hypocrisy. And it's let's get them and then make up stuff about how they're coming after us. I said this earlier. There were Christian universities that are being punished because they did things that were wrong, and the government went after them. Biden went after them, their administration, because they did things that were wrong, not because they were Christian. But what are they saying? We were targets because we're Christian. They lie about it because they never want to accept responsibility. And now that Republicans are in charge, what did they do? They just go after their political enemies for no good reason. This is what they do. Oh, who won the giveaways for the memberships? Den, what do we got? Thank you for being part of the chat. These are, I think, random winners of this giveaway. And I did not choose them. Den did not choose them. And I am just waiting. I think Den's asking me to stall. We'll figure out the winners in a little bit. But I just want to say thank you to Den for gifting the memberships and to Dan for doing that. Thank you to everybody for sticking around. I know this was a long one. I didn't realize it was this late. And as always, you could go to friendlyatheist.com to subscribe to the website, and you can support what I do at patreon.com/Hemant. And we'll be back next week. I know we will get those memberships out to people at some point, so you will get it. And I already see people are getting the memberships. So great, wonderful. Thank you so much. And I should be back this time next week as well. Thanks so much to everyone. Thanks to Den for helping out. I will see you later. I'm going to end this stream now. Have a good night.